By day, the woman is an iron-faced judge. By night, she is a demon from hell. She specializes in punishing those acquitted by the court. One murder after another catches the police's attention, and he begins to suspect the judge in the courtroom. But the police don't know that the killer he faces is not human.
난 악마예요. 보다시피 지금은 강빈나라는 인간의 몸을 빌려서 살고 있고요.
Not long ago, a woman named Jang was stabbed to death by a man in a park. After her death, her soul leaves her body, and guided by the spider lily, she walks toward the gate of rebirth. The strange gate opens before her. She should have gone to the false hell, but due to a classification error, she is sent to murder hell. There are humans inside, who do not reflect on their crimes, and cannot receive forgiveness. They are to be thrown into the abyss of sin for the harshest punishment. Jang is thrown in. This is a mistake, but the judge of murder hell Karina, she is a capricious worker. Even though Guangna explained that she didn't kill anyone and was stabbed to death, Karina finds it troublesome, and is unwilling to investigate. Karina throws Guangna into the abyss of sin, forcing her to serve her sentence and repent. The hell assistant Varric refused to cooperate, saying there is no record of the woman's name on the list. How can someone be casually sent to the abyss of sin? Hearing this, Karina snatches the seal, and sends Guangna away directly. The overall supervisor of Hell Ball becomes aware of the situation. He comes over to inquire. Karina states that anyone sent here should certainly be thrown into the abyss of sin. She doesn't care about the system catching the wrong person. Ball ignores Karina's excuses to punish her capricious behavior. He orders her to go to the human world for a year. She must capture 10 murderers who show no remorse. Then she must take their lives and send them to hell. Assistant Varric is to be punished as well. If they fail to complete the task, they will both disappear. The hell demon Karina entered Zhang Guangna's body. Coincidentally, this human is a judge, so Karina can consider it part of her job. Moreover, there is soda in the human world, which Karina can tolerate for now. Today's court case is somewhat special. The defendant is police officer Han Duan. Not long ago, he faced trial for misconduct and abuse of power. This time, he is on trial again for violent enforcement. However, Han Duan insists on his innocence, so he did not hire a defense attorney. A few days ago, Duan was pursuing a suspect who had assaulted a citizen and fled. Since the suspect was armed with a knife, Duan disarmed him. After the suspect was arrested, he was sentenced to a minor fine and released immediately. Moreover, the suspect falsely accused the officer, claiming that Duan used excessive force and injured his wrist. The prosecutor has submitted the medical report.
들어눕기만 해도 끊어진다는 전치 2주 진단서요?
The prosecutor stated that the plaintiff's hand is injured and he cannot eat, and the police should not use excessive force. Karina is annoyed by this. Police officers are human too. When they encounter an armed assailant, should they treat them gently? If this is excessive force, then this is excessive accusation. This trivial matter has even made it to court. Don't think I don't know. There are vested interests behind this incident. Karina allows Duan to make his final statement, as she is eager to leave work. In fact, Duan only needs to apologize. The matter can be resolved. Unexpectedly, he does not apologize even in the end.
반성하는 게 아니고요?
잘못한 게 없어서 반성할 것도 없습니다.
Karina fairly rules Duan not guilty. This is the first time the officer encounters a just judge. He catches up with Karina, ready to apologize. She takes off her clothes and hands them to Duan, asking him to help deliver them to the 5th floor, to the 18th Criminal Division. Besides that, Karina tells Duan not to think too much. She will not empathize with anyone's case. She will judge cases based on the facts.
내가 왜 형사재판부 판사라는 직업을 좋아하는지 알아요? 나쁜 놈들을 아주 많이 만날 수 있거든요.
Although Duan doesn't understand, he still hands Karina a business card, offering his help if she encounters trouble. Then Duan took the judge's robe and went to the 5th floor. He enters the 18th Criminal Division. In fact, the officer Ju Mandao is the hell assistant Varric. Meanwhile, Karina arrives at the church. She is a designated demon judge. Although Karina feels a bit out of place, she is not afraid of the church. At this moment, a woman is praying. Her name is Che Minjong. She is beaten by her boyfriend every day, and has received death threats. Originally, Karina was supposed to handle Minjong's case, but the other party decided not to submit a punishment agreement. Karina finds this strange and comes to gather information, but Min Jong is unwilling to say much, so Karina can only follow her. Min Jong calls a patrol officer, and Karina explained that she is a prosecutor, but her ID is not with her. She also has a diagnosis of delusions in her bag, making the situation quite awkward. When Karina wakes up in Gwangna's body, she finds it difficult to adapt to human life. Karina mutters about demon hell in the hospital, and the doctor thought that she is a delusional patient. Now the patrol officer also doesn't believe she is a judge, and takes Karina back to the police station. At Duan's workplace, they unexpectedly meet again just one day later. Duan makes a fair ruling for Karina, and she diligently investigates after her shift. He greatly admires Karina. Duan appreciates this judge. The next day, Minjong's case goes to trial. Duan specially goes to the courthouse to observe. The defendant Wen Qingjun has violently assaulted the victim 3 times throughout, and after the victim proposed breaking up, he continued to threaten her. The defendant's attorney acknowledges the acts of violence but denies the threats. This can be confirmed through the non-punishment agreement submitted by the victim. The prosecutor points out that the victim gave up punishment out of fear of retaliation from the perpetrator. However, without concrete evidence, this can only be a one-sided assumption. The prosecutor submits photos of the victim's horrific injuries. The scars are truly shocking. When Qingjun squeezes out a few tears, claiming he was very angry at the time and acted instinctively, he says that if they broke up, they would die together, and this was just an attempt to keep Minjong from leaving, not a death threat. Karina feels speechless. In fact, according to Article 264 of the criminal law, he is facing a 1-year prison sentence when Qingjun has been evading his crimes.
민정이를 정말 사랑했다고 말하고 싶습니다.
선고기를 뵙죠.
When Qingjun truly is a master actor, playing the role of someone with deep feelings. After leaving the courthouse, he mocks Minjong's parents. Noticing this, Duan contacts Karina. If Wen Qingjun is released, he will undoubtedly cause more trouble. He might even hurt Minjong. Karina agrees with his assessment. If Wen Qingjun escapes judgment for murder, she will kill him and send him to hell. This plan is quite clever, but Karina is a judge, and she decides to first meet Minjong's parents. She wants to hear the victim's story firsthand. Minjong submits a non-punishment agreement, fearing retaliation from Wen Qingjun, because even if he is sentenced to the maximum penalty, he will be out in a few years. Minjong doesn't want to live in fear, hiding for the rest of her life. The demon Karina smiles. In other words, Wen Qingjun will retaliate against the victim. He fits Ball's requirements perfectly. Karina rushes to the bathroom and applies mint lip balm under her eyes. Karina forces herself to cry. Then she continues to investigate the case. Later, Duan learned that the 3 talked for 5 hours. Karina couldn't help but cry. The officer is deeply moved. He has come to see the demon as an angel. On the other side, the hell assistant is investigating unresolved serial murder cases. Finding 10 murderers within a year is too difficult. If they can find a murderer who has killed 10 people, Karina can sentence him to death. Then they can complete the task assigned by Ball. But Karina has devised a plan, specifically for Wen Qingjun. Soon, the final judgment day arrives. Karina acts unconventionally. She stated that given the victim's request for leniency, and the defendant's acknowledgement that he will work to correct his mistakes, therefore, the court exercises discretion, and fines Wen Qingjun 3 million won. As soon as these words are spoken, Minjong's parents' expressions change. Duan's eyes turn red with anger. He stops Karina to get clarification, but she calmly replied that the victim doesn't want to pursue the perpetrator. What more can the law do? A judge is not a psychologist. Everything must be determined according to the law. Karina finishes speaking and drives away. Duan warns Wen Qingjun not to go near Che Minjong in the future. The law will not forgive him a second time. Minjong locks herself in her rented room, refusing to see anyone. Duan leaves her a panic button watch, hoping it can help her, and all Karina can do is waiting for Wen Qingjun to show a flaw. In the meantime, Duan visits Minjong's home whenever he can, rain or shine. In the blink of an eye, 2 weeks have passed. The team leader can no longer stand it, and tells Duan to cut back on his visits. After all, there are other cases to investigate in the department. On the other side, Minjong gradually lowers her guard. She wants to move back home to live with her parents. Karina knows the perpetrator won't be able to hold back for long. She takes out a mirror and writes Wen Qingjun's name on it. She saw him purchasing a murder weapon. At night, when Qingjun sticks close to Minjong's door, he falsely claims to be a police officer, saying he's delivering something for Officer Duan. Hearing this, Minjong asks him to leave it at the door. After the sounds outside fade away, she opens the door through the security bars.
보고 싶었어, 민정아.
When Qingjun forcefully kicks open the door and throws away Minjong's watch, when Qingjun violently beats the woman, and Minjong can only kneel and beg for mercy. When Qingjun warns her that, if she dares to call the police or tell her parents again, he will kill them, Minjong decides to seek death. Karina watches this scene and reveals a satisfied smile. Now it's her turn to go to work. Karina intercepts Wen Qingjun as he exits the apartment. She draws her judgment blade, and her pupils shimmer with purple light. She hasn't had the chance to strike yet. Duan drives to the scene, and Karina has no choice but to put away her weapon. Duan is about to hit someone again, but Karina grabs his hand. If he commits misconduct again, he will lose his job. Duan tries to break free, realizing that Karina is extremely strong. Soon, the police arrive at the scene and take Wen Qingjun back to the station for questioning. Karina follows Duan to examine the crime scene. She can see what happened at that time through the traces left at the scene.
재판 결과 직접 보니까 어떠세요? 이제 와서 미안하세요?
전혀?
Karina tells Duan not to lose sight of the main point. She is merely making a judgment. According to the law, if there's someone to blame, it should be the law. Moreover, even if Wen Qingjun is sentenced to a year, will he be docile when he gets out? Duan has nothing more to say to Karina, and turns back to the station to interrogate Wen Qingjun. At that time, if Duan hadn't arrived in time, Minjong might have hanged herself. Wen Qingjun breathes a sigh of relief, knowing that Minjong is still alive. Wen Qingjun says that if she died, he wouldn't live either. Moreover, it's normal for them to argue. During their relationship, she willingly opened the door for him to enter. Is it reasonable for the police to intervene in a couple's argument? Since the arrest warrant hasn't been issued yet, the station can only release Wen Qingjun, but this time, they will not let him off the hook. Duan plans to sleep downstairs from Wen Qingjun. Karina knows that Minjong is still alive, but she is best at making excuses. Breathing does not mean one is truly alive. Minjong's mental state is chaotic. She has no hope or courage to continue living. She is no different from the dead.
그렇다 쳐도 그 문정준이 직접 죽인 게 아니.
정신적 살인도 살인이야.
The assistant asks, aren't the police supposed to apply for detention? This time, are they unable to intervene? Karina laughs at the assistant's naivety. When Qingjun agrees to cooperate with the police investigation, he has no intention of fleeing, but the station's arrest warrant is not approved. The laws in this country are baffling. As such, Duan can only guard the victim's home every day. One day, just as he enters the elevator, when Qingjun appears from the hallway, he covered the peephole and the camera, preparing to knock on the door. Suddenly, his phone vibrates in his pocket. When Qingjun glances at the content and leaves, the next day, Duan visits Minjong's home. She realized that the camera has been covered only when she hears the doorbell. This reminds Minjong of that night, triggering an acute stress reaction. Minjong says the person outside is Wen Qingjun. He also lied that day, claiming to be a police officer. Minjong's father looked at his distraught daughter and realized that calling the police is useless. As long as Wen Qingjun is alive, his daughter will not find peace. Minjong's father tells his wife and daughter to hide in the bedroom, and he rushes out with a kitchen knife. Fortunately, Duan is quick and manages to disarm Minjong's father in time, preventing any casualties. The family is on the brink of madness. At this moment, Duan suddenly receives a call. Wen Qingjun is dead. 12 hours ago, the text message Wen Qingjun received is from Minjong. Minjong asks to meet him to resolve their issues face to face. At midnight, when Qingjun arrived at the agreed location, the demolition of Huangtiandeng is imminent, and the residents have already moved out. When Qingjun walks into 323-21, it is an abandoned standalone villa. He hears the sound of high heels coming from upstairs. When Qingjun takes out a hammer, the judge descends the stairs. When Qingjun is unclear about what is happening, he heard Minjong's voice. In the next moment, the altered voice assistant walks out. He requests Karina to leave work early.
너 때문에
야근했잖아요.
From now on, the true judgment begins. Karina reveals the weapon in her hand. When Qingjun senses something is wrong and turns to run, the surroundings shift. He finds himself in a restaurant. All around him are couples on dates. Karina wants Wen Qingjun to experience everything that Minjong went through. This is the rule of hell. The scene changes. Wen Qingjun becomes a couple with Karina, but the latter is moody. She loses her temper. Whenever things don't go well, she threatens to kill herself. As long as Wen Qingjun breaks up with her, he will be beaten up by Karina. He locks the door and hides in the bathroom to call the police. Karina will break down the door and beat him. By the time the police arrest this crazy woman, Wen Qingjun quickly moves away. The court releases Karina. She comes looking for him like a ghost. When Qingjun wants to call the police, Karina threatens him. If she gets out of prison, she will definitely kill him.
우리가 헤어지면 말래.
Karina picks up a hammer. She smashes Wen Qingjun's leg. After Karina finishes her task, she frantically apologizes again. Karina swears she will never do this again. Karina perfectly portrays an abuser. When Qingjun is mentally tortured to the brink of collapse, he hears Karina's voice trembling. In the end, he chooses to end his life. In the next moment, he returns to reality. Karina stated that she and Wen Qingjun are playing a couple. She feels disgusted too, but this is the process of hell's judgment. Only by making those unrepentant criminals feel the pain experienced by the victims, hell judges can only take action. Unexpectedly, when Qingjun doesn't give up, he actually dreams of launching a sneak attack. He sees Karina as a woman, so he thinks he might be able to kill her. Unbeknownst to him, this human facade looks weak, but inside is a demon. Karina is like a hunting beast. She toys with her prey, when Qingjun is like a flea in her hands. Soon, he is beaten by Karina to the point of not being able to get up. He can only kneel and beg for mercy. Admitting his crimes, he says, "I deserve to die."
그럼 죽어.
Karina takes out the blade of judgment. The blade pierces Wen Qingjun's body. Then Karina stamps him and sends him to hell. Thus, she has sent away the first criminal. The scene shifts, returning to the present timeline. Duan heads to the crime scene. When Qingjun's death is horrific, he is beaten so badly that his face is bruised. There is a branding on his forehead, written in ancient Greek, the Valley of Hinnom. However, the crime scene is very clean. No traces of blood can be found, because Karina called the hell cleaning crew. Regardless of fingerprints, bloodstains, or hair, or the scene damaged by the struggle, everything is restored to its original state. In the blink of an eye, Karina has a bad reputation in hell. The cleaning crew is afraid of offending her. They take their work very seriously. They carry out the cleanup perfectly. They throw the body at the front door, which is also Karina's idea. She wants everyone to know the consequences of doing bad things. On the other side, when Qingjun's autopsy report is out, although there are multiple fractures on his body, the key cause of death is excessive bleeding after the stabbing. Before the incident, the surveillance at Minjong's front door captured when Qingjun on the phone with someone. The police retrieved the call records and found that the contact used a disposable phone. Additionally, the crime scene is in a demolition zone, so there are no surveillance cameras. In short, this case is very troublesome. The only information is the mark on the deceased's head, and the Valley of Hinnom is indeed hell in the Bible. After Wen Qingjun's death, Minjong's life returns to normal. She specially goes to the police station to thank Duan. Minjun said that a few days ago at the church, she met Judge Jang. She was confessing to the Lord at that time. She feels that being happy about Wen Qingjun's death is a despicable thing. The judge tells her not to feel guilty. At the same time, Karina is reviewing the case files. She wants to select the next suitable candidate. The director suddenly asks to speak with her. Karina had just been discharged from the hospital and wasn't in good health, so the dean has been holding back and not mentioning it. But recently, Wen Qingjun's case was only fined 3 million won. Moreover, as a public servant, she wears heavy makeup every day and dresses strangely. These issues need to be addressed.
저 지금 완전 풀입게 입었는데.
The director is very angry. If it weren't for Congressman Jang, I would have exiled Karina to the countryside long ago. It turned out that Zhang Guangna has support behind her. This supporter is named Zhang Zijie. He is a government congressman. Guangna has an engagement with the congressman's eldest son. But the situation seems complicated. What role Congressman Jang ultimately plays still needs to be seen. At this moment, Karina and her assistant return to the apartment. This is the only building in the area that hasn't been demolished, because Karina spends her salary on luxury brands. She can only rent a place like this. Moreover, the landlord is a Christian. Every time a residents' meeting is held at her house, Karina has to wear sunglasses and hide the cross. In fact, she could choose not to attend, but the landlord's pastries are too delicious. The landlord holds the meeting to get everyone to sign the petition against the demolition. She wants to save the building. Tenants who sign will have their rent halved and management fees waived. Karina is worried about not having money. She immediately signs her name to escape her current predicament. Karina plans to use Detective Han Duan to find 9 criminals that meet her criteria. After all, apart from the court, only the police have access to more bad people. Karina lies to the people at the police station that she is Duan's girlfriend. She comes to inquire about the police's location.
그럼 거짓말을 도대체 왜 하는 겁니까?
거짓말한 게 문제면 지금부터 나랑 사귀어요?
Duan can't stand her entanglement anymore. He can only agree to sit down and talk. Karina sees the fish taking the bait. She gets Duan drunk. Then Karina asks him again, are there any criminals at the police station who haven't been arrested? Duan says he has killed 3 people, and he has no regrets about it. Karina is very happy to hear this. She wants to ask for more details, but Duan falls asleep. There are still traces of tears on his face, as if he has some unspoken secrets. The next day, Duan wakes up. He found out that Karina hasn't left yet. As Duan is about to approach her, Karina suddenly stabs him. As the male lead, Duan surely won't die quickly. In 1999, in his hometown town, Duan holds 2 small red flowers, preparing to give them to his mother. As Duan enters the house, he saw his mother lying in a pool of blood, and the killer has not left his home. What Duan refers to as having killed should be related to this painful memory. In summary, he is not guilty. Karina's misjudgment attracted the attention of the supervisor Barlow. Originally, she only needed to find 10 criminals. Now she must find 20. After Barlow finished speaking, he leaves. Duan is revived. But what happened before is beyond his understanding. Duan arrests her and takes her back to the police station. Duan claimed that Karina stabbed him with a knife, but he has no wounds on him. Moreover, he reeked of alcohol. The people at the police station don't believe Duan at all. However, they are curious why Karina does not resist.
그게 다운 씨가 이런 걸 좋아하는 것 같아서.
A colleague is very angry. Although some people like handcuffs and dog leashes, the moment you force someone to wear them, you become a pervert. Afterward, Karina goes to find her assistant to discuss how to gather 20 criminals within a year. The employee at the pork cutlet shop recognized that she is from hell. The employee's name is Gamori, the unlucky one, who sent Jiang Guangna to the wrong place. Sometimes, human servility is terrifying. Gamori kneels before the queen. She greatly admires the queen. Gamori feels ashamed for getting Karina into trouble on Earth, so she is willing to help the queen complete her task. After Karina leaves, she goes to see Duan. She explained her background. Karina demonstrated her powers. She warned Duan to stop here, not to spread the word about resurrection. After all, no one will believe it. This statement hits Duan's sore spot. After his mother's incident, Duan was too young, and every time he went to the police station for questioning, he repeatedly told the truth, but the officers did not believe him at all. Now Duan has grown up. He will not give up on the truth. The scene shifts inside an office building. The company's name is Taiyu. Zhang Zijie's eldest son is looking at a petition. Unexpectedly, he saw Jiang Guangna's signature. How could she have gone to the Huangtian apartment? Because Taiyu's recent development project is just this building that hasn't been resolved. The scene shifts again. At the police station, the scar evaluation results for Wen Qingjun have come out. The wound looks like a scar caused by iron, heated above 200 degrees, and this iron was specially customized, so the police station is preparing to consult relevant personnel, such as the blacksmith shop. One night, a family of 3 is hurrying home. The father is sitting in the back seat, drunk. The mother is driving. She plans to open the sunroof to get some air. The car loses control and veers off the road. Water is about to submerge their bellies. The father, now sober, tells his wife and son to climb out of the sunroof to escape. He is trapped by the seat and cannot free himself. For the safety of her son, The mother can only gather her strength to swim to shore. Then, she goes back to save her husband. But at this moment, the car has already sunk. The door won't open due to a malfunction. Before her oxygen runs out, she surfaced for air. The woman returns to the shore to seek help from passers-by. Unexpectedly, no one is willing to help. In the end, her husband Hyunsu tragically dies. The mother-in-law goes mad at the funeral, saying that her daughter-in-law Ji-young killed her son. She wants to take her grandson Ji-ho away. Soon, this matter goes to court. The mother-in-law takes Ji-ho away, without the consent of the guardian Ji-young. To this day, she has not returned him. The mother-in-law believed that it is perfectly normal for a grandmother to raise her grandson. So how can this be considered a crime? Thus, she disregards courtroom decorum and begin to make a scene. She also said that the judge and prosecutors are worthless.
법정 모욕죄로 처벌받고 싶어요? 처벌해! 자식 앞세운 애미가 무서울 게 뭐야?
Karina announced that the defendant's interrogation is over. She has someone take her away. The mother-in-law grabs Ji-young by the hair. She questions Ji-young, asking if she collected insurance money after Hyunsu's death. She also said that Ji-young's first husband died suddenly as well. Hearing this, Karina realized that this woman may be a habitual offender who kills husbands for insurance money. Karina goes out to investigate. She is soon approached by Duan again. Karina shakes him off, wanting to go to the school to talk to Ji-young, who is currently in class. Ji-young appeared very kind, not complaining about her mother-in-law. Moreover, Ji-ho is not Ji-young's son, but a student she once taught. His biological mother passed away when Ji-ho was 2 years old. As a teacher, she took special care of Ji-ho. Because of this, she married Hyunsu. 6 months into their marriage, a tragedy struck. The reason Ji-young wants to raise Ji-ho is that the mother-in-law abandoned him when Hyunsu was 5. Leaving home, 30 years later, she suddenly reappeared. She frequently asks Hyunsu for money. The mother-in-law covets the death insurance money left for Ji-ho. Therefore, Ji-young cannot hand the child over to her. After saying this, she started to cry. Karina, having heard this, wants to leave. Duan hurriedly gets into the car and says he has investigated Ji-young and learned that her first husband suddenly went blind and fell to his death on a mountain. Ji-young inherited his apartment and received 500 million won in insurance money. As for Hyunsu, who just passed, his death insurance cash amounts to 3 billion won. Ji-young and her son Ji-ho will receive 8 billion and 2 billion won, respectively. Duan drops Karina off at her apartment before leaving to shake off Duan. At 5 o'clock the next morning, Karina plans to go out. Duan is already waiting outside. He drives the RV directly over. He has been waiting downstairs since last night. Fortunately, Karina quickly comes to a realization. She saw Duan as a free chauffeur. Soon after, the two arrive at the mother-in-law's shop. The mother-in-law refused to hand over the child to resist the court. Hiding Ji-ho in the closet, Karina stated that she has no interest in the child. She just wants to ask why she believes Ji-young killed her husband for insurance. Does she have evidence? The mother-in-law claimed that on the day of Hyunsu's funeral, she saw Ji-young being affectionate with a man. Moreover, 3 days after the funeral, when she picked up her grandson from school, she saw trash everywhere. She asked Ji-ho and learned that Ji-young had ordered fried chicken for the child, and then she didn't come home for 2 days. Only then did the mother-in-law pack up and take her grandson away. Karina is not human and cannot empathize. What the old lady said is not evidence. She prepared to leave, but Duan, as a police officer, wants to learn more. He pulls out a cross to intimidate Karina. Then, he encouraged Ji-ho to go buy snacks with his aunt. Karina chats with the child. Ji-ho shows her a sketchbook. Soon, Karina catched a glimpse of Ji-young's true nature. It turned out that before the accident, Ji-ho saw his stepmother applying adhesive to the seatbelt in the back seat. After she swam to shore, she intentionally closed the sunroof because Ji-ho was just a child. Ji-young did not hide anything from him. She threatened Ji-ho, saying that if he dared to speak out, she would kill him. Although Duan is angry, he known that a child's testimony cannot lead to a conviction.
그 아이가 조사를 받을 때마다 진술을 번복한다면 과연 그 말을 누가 믿어줄까요?
내가 믿어요.
Karina's words once again touched Duan. If he had encountered such a judge back then, he could have caught the murderer. In the new trial, Karina does not convict the mother-in-law, but instead gives her probation, as long as she does not commit a crime. In the next 2 years, she will not be punished for this incident. This is the lightest sentence the judge can give. Of course, the mother-in-law and Ji-young need to discuss the matter of custody. However, Ji-young is very good at acting. On the surface, she pretends to be pitiful in front of the police. In fact, she plans to kill both the grandmother and the grandson. After spending these days together, Duan decided to give up pursuing whether Karina is a demon. Although he was mistakenly killed by her, he does not dislike this straightforward judge. Karina finally shaked off the entanglement, but she feels a sense of loss inside. She felt that staying in the human world for too long has tainted her with human emotions. Karina suppressed her feelings and wrote Ji-young's name on the mirror. Karina wants to see what this woman is up to. Ji-young is at the door with the police, demanding the child. The mother-in-law refused to let him go. She also said that the grandson saw her harm others. So the police, on charges of child abuse, request Ji-young to undergo an investigation. She will not hand her grandson over to a murderer. Ji-young turns around, showing a disdainful smile. She will not give up so easily. That day, after school, Ji-ho encounters an old woman carrying luggage. He steps forward to help her. The old woman hands him a bottle of red ginseng juice. She says, "This is a drink for the elderly. If you drink it around 10 o'clock at night, your feet won't hurt, and you can sleep soundly." Upon hearing this, Ji-ho wants to take it back for his grandmother. Little does he know, as soon as he leaves, Ji-young's car stops in front of the old woman. She gives her some money. Ji-young has mixed sleeping pills into the drink. That night, Ji-ho is worried about his grandmother's leg pain. He hands her the bottle of drink. The old woman drinks it and falls into a coma. Ji-young came over and took Ji-ho away. In the evening, Duan received a distress call from the boy. The police sent personnel to Ji-young's house and to the grandmother's house to verify the situation. Fortunately, they arrived just in time. They send the old woman for emergency treatment. Duan runs to Ji-young's house and knocks on the door. He finds no one answering. Fortunately, the patrol officer received a tip from a witness, stating that Ji-ho is by a public phone. Duan finds him there. Ji-ho, soaked to the skin. He learned that, not long ago, he was taken home by Ji-young. Ji-young filled the bathtub with water. She wanted to play a game with Ji-ho.
지호가 얼마나 오래 잠수할 수 있는지 엄마가 볼 거야. 엄마가 그만하기 전에 절대 올라오면 안 돼.
Karina saw this scene through the mirror. She has her assistant call Ji-young to arrange a meeting at the place where Hyun-soo was killed. She threatens Ji-young, saying that if she doesn't come, she will hand over the evidence of the murder to the police. Ji-young dares not take the risk. She has no choice but to comply. Meanwhile, Ji-ho gets dressed and escapes from the house. He contacts Duan using a public phone. At this moment, Ji-young arrived at the seaside. The submerged car surprisingly drives out of the water toward the shore. The headlights dazzle Ji-young, making it hard for her to open her eyes. Karina gets out of the car and walks up to her. The blade of judgment reveals itself with a purple glow. Karina slaps Ji-young twice, because she still does not admit that she killed Hyun-soo. Karina grabs her and lifts her into the air. She throws Ji-young into the car, making her experience the despair Hyun-soo felt before he died. The sensation of drowning causes Ji-young to panic. She confesses the details of murdering her two husbands. Her first husband was old and ugly. He only had one advantage: he was rich. Ji-young sought the highest insurance payout. She first drugged her husband, then she injected him with something that harmed his eyes. Because her first husband liked to climb mountains, Ji-young took the opportunity to push him off a cliff. The feeling of getting money this way was too good. Soon, Ji-young set her sights on Hyun-soo. She used the same method to kill him. Karina asks her why she doesn't kill Ji-ho. Ji-young's histrionic personality comes into play. She claims she wants to raise Ji-ho. Unexpectedly, this statement angers Karina. Ji-young has to admit that she plans to fabricate the appearance that Ji-ho drowned while bathing to seize her stepson's insurance money. After Karina learns the truth, she captures Ji-young and tortures her. After going through the established process, she stabbed Ji-young to death, sealing it properly. She sends the sinner to the Valley of Sin. The assistant calls in a cleaning crew. The crime scene is cleaned up. Karina bundles up the body and sends it to the street across from the police station. The assistant does not understand this approach. Karina explains, "Only in this way will Officer Duan suspect me and come looking for me." After all, playing with the police officer has become Karina's only pleasure in the human world. However, she does not yet know that the game can spiral out of control. Karina did not wait for Duan. Instead, she received an invitation from Senator Jang to learn more about her original self. Karina agrees to have dinner with them.
귀한 양식을 주셔서 감사하고.
역시 한식이 제일 맛있어.
While enjoying the food, she also requests to take some home. Fortunately, Senator Jang doesn't mind. From his account, it is revealed that 5 years ago, Jang Guangna's parents immigrated to Argentina. Her brother runs a restaurant there. Senator Jang has always admired Guangna. He wants her to go into politics, to take his position, because his eldest son Taekyung is focused on his career, and his second son Shanhua lacks talent. Thus, Senator Jang sees Guangna as a daughter. He inquires about her amnesia. He also probes into how Guangna came to live in the Huangtian apartment. Karina gives a perfect response. She says she enjoys peace and quiet. She doesn't care about the lost memories. She is satisfied with her current life. After Karina finishes speaking, she takes the takeout box and leaves. This was freshly prepared by the kitchen, at Senator Zhang's request. Meanwhile, Senator Zhang's second son watches her leave. From the second floor, Karina takes the food to Gemori. Because of this twist of fate, the human who was possessed has a tragic life. She grew up in an orphanage. After her placement period, she lived independently. The poor girl worked 5 jobs. She was deceived by a trusted friend, losing all her savings. In the end, she chose to commit suicide. After Gemori possessed her, she immediately went to find those scammers. Gemori reclaimed the original owner's savings. In fact, the assistant who possessed Man Dao also has a tragic story. It seems he died from overwork after overtime. These humans are so unfortunate. Karina asks Gemori to find out if there are any murderers who haven't been arrested, because Duan hasn't contacted her. Karina has lost her motivation to stay in the human world. She wants to complete her mission and return to hell. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to let go, she received contact from the police, because the victims of the 2 cases were both defendants that Karina had dealt with. So the police station wants to question her. However, Karina is a judge, and she quickly takes control of the situation.
배자영이 죽어서 형사님 기분 좋죠? 짜릿하고 통쾌하죠?
아니요.
As a police officer, Duan believed that criminals should face legal punishment and receive the consequences they deserve. Dying in a way that obstructs police investigations does not bring satisfaction to anyone. Duan suspects Karina is the murderer, so he wants to keep his distance from her. Karina insists that Duan drive her home. When they arrive at the Huangtian apartment, they encounter an old woman.
다시는 이 여자 만나지도 말고 우리 같이 있다가는 둘 중에 하나는 반드시 죽는다.
Karina can't help but admire. This old woman is quite mysterious, but Duan can't sleep after hearing this. After all, he did die once because of Karina, while Duan is troubled. Officer Jaeyoung comes over with some drinks. Their relationship is as close as mother and son. Only Jaeyoung knows what Duan has been through. However, fate always brings surprises. The next day, Gemori goes to report to Karina. She has found information about a cold case. The murderer Jay has harmed 12 people, and he has yet to be caught. His statute of limitations will expire on May 8, 2014. Although a 10-year-old child witnessed the crime, his testimony was not accepted. Duan instructs Gemori to investigate this child. As expected, this child is the male lead. At this moment, Duan arrived at the roadside, where Hyunsu drowned, because the police found the deceased Ji Young's car here. Duan looks around, and suddenly spots a soda can. The way the can is crushed is just like how Karina does it. Karina is unaware that she has revealed a flaw. She has just received a thank you gift from Jiho. Karina plans to give a return gift to the little boy, so Karina arranged to send Jiho a letter from heaven. She conveyed what Hyunsu wanted to say to his son. Karina does good deeds anonymously. She is at home reading a book that Duan has read. Unexpectedly, the landlord comes to knock on the door. She says there is a new tenant next door, and that tenant is none other than Han Duan. Karina gazes into his eyes, and suddenly feels heartache. Then, she collapses to the ground. Seeing the scene before him, Duan is shocked. He takes Karina to the hospital for an examination, but the doctor finds nothing unusual. He can only conclude that the patient has been subjected to external stimuli, causing palpitations. What kind of stimulation could affect Karina? Must be the eye contact with Dawn that led to her increased heart rate, but the demon does not understand what this signifies. In any case, the two officially begin their days as neighbors, Karina believed that she is not a cautious person. Living so close to a detective, she might reveal his true nature and get into trouble, so she instructs her assistant to investigate Jiang Guangna to quickly dispel Han Dawn's suspicions. At this moment, Gameri sends a text message inviting Karina to meet. As she leaves the apartment building, Dawn follows closely behind. However, Karina is a demon, and after turning into a side alley, she disappears. She successfully shakes off Dawn. Karina arrived at the convenience store where Gameri works. Gameri wants to invite Karina to a demon gathering. It turned out that demons sent to Seoul and Gyeonggi province hold gatherings to exchange information and track down the escaped Satan. If they can present Satan to Lucifer and Baal, they can earn merit to return to hell. Upon hearing this news, she becomes intrigued. The next day, they bring their assistant into the gathering place. Unbeknownst to them, Dawn has followed them as well. Although the building is labeled Delicious Cuisine Academy, he suspects it is an illegal gathering spot. Dawn directly opens the classroom door and finds himself falling into a den of demons. Karina has to step in to defuse the situation. She falsely claims that Dawn is her driver. In hell, Karina is a national idol, a top-tier goddess. Upon hearing this, the gathering leader noticed that Karina has brought a newcomer and steps forward to explain the reason for the gathering's establishment. It all dates back to 26 years ago, when Lucifer, originally an angel, fell and became a demon. He officially took charge of hell. Satan, like Baal, as the second in command, led a rebellion. Satan couldn't defeat Lucifer, so he had to abandon his followers and flee hell. Before leaving, Satan did not forget to steal Lucifer's treasure, the Chiron. With this artifact, even in the mortal realm, he could achieve immortality in human form. However, while fleeing, Satan dropped the Chiron into the mortal world. Since then, both have vanished without a trace. Dawn listens but feels no connection. What he is curious about is Karina, why she was sent to the human realm, to carry out what mission. Of course, she is unwilling to disclose, and Dawn insists on not leaving. He volunteers alongside the demons, distributing lunchboxes to the elderly. Demons occasionally hold such activities. Their purpose is to better disguise themselves as humans. Dawn observes everything, and he even discovered that the volunteer leader, being a demon, can shed tears.
고자질이라도 할 생각인가?
무슨 말씀이신지.
내가 눈물 흘리는 거 봤으니까 당장 날 죽이라고?
It turned out that tears from demons are a taboo. Dawn agreed to keep the leader's secret. The leader also warns him to stay away from Karina, or he won't know how he lost his head. However, the leader soon noticed that Karina has developed feelings for this human. If a demon falls for a mortal, it will pay with its life. While Karina is troubled by palpitations, the assistant secretly joins the church. Even though the Bible burns in his hands, he insists on participating in prayers. He dreams of cleansing his sins, and wants to see what heaven looks like. The boss there surely won't exploit the workers. Days pass slowly. Although Dawn wants to investigate Karina, he finds no fingerprints of hers on the soda can, and soon, the police station receives a new case. That night, a man from Changyang Road, in the Yongsan district of Seoul, calls for help, claiming that his wife and child have been murdered. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they see blood everywhere, with a dagger and hammer scattered on the floor. Several corpses still radiate warmth. The male homeowner is on the brink of a breakdown.
누가 죽였는지 알 것 같아요.
혹시 의심 가는 사람 있으십니까? 나.
Dawn received the news. He quickly arrived at the scene. The bodies of the three remain as they were, with a family photo displayed nearby. The familiar scene reminds Dawn of the day his family was murdered. The male homeowner, Liang Shangbin, is taken to the police station, and he changes his story, claiming he is not the killer. However, there are no signs of any outsiders entering the crime scene, and his fingerprints are found on the murder weapon.
왜 시카라에 제 지문이 묻어있는지도 저 모르겠고 저 죽인 적도 없고 죽였다고 저 말한 적도 없어요.
According to Liang Shangbin, his eldest son is going through a rebellious phase, so their relationship is strained. Thus, Liang called his son to the living room, wanting to have a talk with him, but he can't remember what happened afterward. When he comes to his senses, his family is all dead. During the subsequent interrogation, Liang Shangbin's behavior becomes increasingly strange. He seems to be suffering from dissociative identity disorder, suddenly claiming his name is Jin Julu, and that he is a 5th grade student at Nanying Primary School. Then, a new personality emerges, claiming to be Liang Shangbin's friend, Ju Dawan. Dawn handles it calmly, and he questions Ju Dawan if he is the killer. To his surprise, the latter admits to the crime.
친한 친구의 가족을 죽인 이유가 뭐야?
승빈을 무시했으니까.
Ju Dawan believed that his friend's wife and children disrespected Shangbin, which is why he took action to teach them a lesson. Duan has reviewed the files, and he knows Liang Shangbin has a history of domestic violence. It seems this is also the doing of the Ju Dawan personality. The police feel puzzled. They don't know if Liang Shangbin is genuinely mentally ill, or just putting on an act for everyone. After examinations, the doctor indeed cannot rule out the possibility of Liang Shangbin having amnesia and dissociative identity disorder. He needs to undergo more thorough tests. In the meantime, Duan continues to interrogate Shangbin. He tells him that he has 3 personalities inside him. Duan intentionally says the opposite, mixing up the surnames of Dawan and Julu. Then Duan pointed out that he never told Ju Julu he was a police officer, yet the other party calls him a police officer.
김서율이 누군진 모르겠지만 이 드라마에 이런 데 많이 나오니까 당연히.
Liang Shangbin instinctively corrects the surname of Jin Julu. Duan heard this, and he already has a conclusion in mind. At the same time, Karina also sets her sights on the case. She doesn't care if the killer is mentally unstable. As long as someone is killed, he must pay the price. Whether Liang Shangbin is acting or not, he is certainly dedicated. In front of his mother-in-law and sister-in-law, he switches between his 3 personalities. Let's return to the case. The victims have marks from being struck on the back of the head with a hammer. The key cause of death for all 3 is severed neck veins, leading to excessive blood loss. Moreover, the autopsy report shows that Liang Shangbin continued to stab the bodies with a knife after their deaths, especially his son's corpse, which was the most severely damaged. There were a total of 13 stab wounds on his body. The crime scene also revealed the eldest son's mobile phone, but it was severely damaged and under repair. After Duan exposed the flaw with the name change, he is convinced that Liang Shangbin is feigning multiple personalities, but they must present solid evidence. Just then, the police station received news that Judge Jiang Guangna has pulled strings to move from the solo court to the agreement court, and has been assigned to Liang Shangbin's case. Before long, the court date arrived. The lawyer approaches the case from the angle of multiple personalities, helping Liang Shangbin avoid conviction. Meanwhile, the prosecution commissions the National Forensic Hospital to conduct a psychological assessment of the defendant. The 2 sides remain at a stalemate, refusing to yield. At this moment, the lawyer orders Liang Shangbin to keep quiet, and his attitude angers Liang. The so-called Ju Dawan personality emerges, and he wants to kill his disrespectful lawyer in court. Karina is very interested as she watches Liang Shangbin cause a scene in court. Then, she announced that a detailed examination will be conducted on the defendant, and the verdict will be set after the assessment results are out. In the evening, Karina sneaks into the hospital with Gamari, planning to use physical therapy to treat Liang Shangbin's multiple personalities. Suddenly, Duan emerged from under the bed and grabbed her ankle. Karina breaks free and runs away. After losing track of her, he returns to the Huangtian apartment to stake out. Facing questions, Karina remains calm. Karina tells Duan to present the evidence. The police station received a cooperation notice from the phone company. It will take at least a month to repair the deceased's mobile phone. In other words, if there is key evidence inside, it can only be submitted at the second trial. But Duan known that Karina is a ticking time bomb. She might let the killer go in the first trial. Suddenly, Duan thinks of something. He can access the deceased's cloud account to check. Inside, there is indeed an audio recording of the eldest son being killed. He rushed to the courtroom and hit the play button. Everyone can clearly hear that the son called the police after suffering domestic violence, and he impulsively killed in retaliation. Meanwhile, the wife had just returned home from work, only to stumble upon the scene of her son's murder. Before she could even question what her husband had done, she was struck down by Liang Shangbin with a hammer, and then stabbed after falling. The youngest daughter hears her mother's screams and comes out to check. The youngest daughter is also brutally murdered by Liang Shangbin. The recording clearly shows that the perpetrator killed while fully aware of his actions. Liang Shangbin indeed committed murder. However, Karina argues that Duan did not submit it beforehand, and she does not acknowledge the audio evidence. As a result, Liang Shangbin is still deemed to have acted in a state of insanity. Thus, the court finds him not guilty, and he only needs to undergo 2 years of treatment and supervision. At this statement, everyone is shocked. The mother of the deceased cannot accept this verdict.
하나님이 사랑한 사람이 죽었어도 그렇게 똑같이 판결하실 건가요?
Karina sees the disappointment in Dawn's eyes, and her heart feels a pang of pain. Meanwhile, Dawn follows Liang Shangbin and boards the prisoner transport vehicle. As they travel halfway, a truck appeared, and it crashed into the police bus. 2 men in black jump out of the truck, and they are highly skilled, quickly taking down the police. Then the men in black jump onto the bus and pull Liang Shangbin out of the compartment. Dawn chased after them with a gun, while one of the men in black takes Liang Shangbin away, and the remaining henchmen engage Dawn. Dawn tackles one of the men in black and cuffs him. The man transporting Liang turns around and grabs Dawn by the throat, throwing him onto the bus, knocking him unconscious. In the end, the men in black leave with Liang Shangbin and deliver him to Gameri. Dawn suspected this is related to Karina, so he heads straight back to the apartment to question her. In fact, Karina has heard about the transport vehicle explosion, and she has been worried about Dawn. However, Dawn is very angry now. He is unaware of her concern. He tells Karina to return Liang Shangbin and to hold a retrial to prevent Karina from killing the criminal. He grabs a chair and guards her door. In the dead of night, a shadow approaches Karina, and then Dawn heard a banging sound from behind the door. He knocks and asks what's going on, but Karina's tone remains steady, though Dawn cannot see that. The person behind the door is her assistant. He instinctively senses something is off. As he walks outside the apartment building to check, the assistant has already retracted the rope, while Karina slips down the stairs. She approaches Liang Shangbin and begins to torture the murderer, making Liang experience the pain endured by the victims. Liang Shangbin was tortured to the point of mental breakdown, and he cannot escape this building. At first, Liang Shangbin thinks the judge is playing a prank on him. He tries to maintain his act of multiple personalities to uphold his persona, but he soon realized that Karina's actions are real. Unable to fight back, he can only kneel and confess. Karina counters with a math problem.
5 더하기 3 더하기 13 해봐.
21.
맞아? 21. 네가 가족들을 칼로 찌른 횟수지.
Karina picks up a knife and stabs Liang Shangbin 21 times. When it comes to the final stab, Karina summons the judgment blade and sends Liang Shangbin to hell. The criminal's corpse becomes fuel to feed the flames of hell. The next morning, Dawn sees Karina off to work, thinking the mission has been successful. Dawn suddenly received news of Liang Shangbin's death. His body is found within Dawn's jurisdiction. This time, the situation is no different from the previous two. There are no traces found at the scene. Dawn takes out the business card of the Demon Volunteer Association president. He decided to consult him. On the other side, the assistant, following Karina's instructions, investigated Jiang Guangna's life. However, he only uncovers minor details, such as why Jiang's parents immigrated, who killed her, and the reasons for her broken engagement. The assistant finds none of it. The scene shifts to Dawn. He unexpectedly learned that the president of the association's suicide. This is due to his fear of Karina finding out. He cried. Thus, Dawn suspected that the president's death is caused by Karina, but the one who acted was actually Gameri, sent to the human realm, not to kill criminals, but to punish those demons who have become humanized or fallen in love with humans. After noticing the president crying, Gameri secretly follows him. She discovered that the president has fallen in love with a human. Gameri bluntly stated that as long as he returns to hell for judgment, she won't disturb his human lover. Hearing this, he has no choice but to commit suicide. At this moment, the cleaning crew reports to Gameri. While they are cleaning Liang Shangbin's body, they discovered that Karina's murder this time is filled with deep emotion, and Karina, the person involved, is now behaving unusually. She arrived at the victim's home to eavesdrop. The mother of the deceased learns of Liang Shangbin's tragic death, and she does not feel relieved. She wants to see with her own eyes him being convicted in court and paying the price. Karina heard this, and her heart aches a little. This is a sign that she is being affected by humanity. Not long after, Dawn catched up to Karina and questions her about why she killed the president. Karina is unaware of the matter, but Dawn is convinced that the president's death is her doing. The two have an unpleasant argument because of this, and Karina angrily returns to her apartment. She encounters Taikue, the son of Councilman Jang, who hopes that Karina does not abuse her privileges, using the councilman's favor to cause trouble in court, and that their family should not see each other anymore. In addition, Taikue also warned that the neighbors in the Huangtian apartment are dangerous, and she should be careful. That night, a single mother in the apartment is walking alone on a dimly lit street. Unexpectedly, a mysterious figure drags her into an alley. The man raised his weapon and was about to strike, but fortunately, two passing neighbors intervened in time. The mysterious man abandoned his attack and fled. Soon, the single mother went to the police station to report the incident. It happened so suddenly that she couldn't remember many details. All she knew was that the weapon used by the attacker was unusual. After finishing her statement, the single mother drew a sketch on paper. It was a diamond-shaped, spiked weapon. The female officer felt heavy-hearted after looking at it. A few years ago, the killer who murdered Domi's mother had also used a similar tool. The officer did not tell Domi, and continued to handle the recent serial murder case. They had investigated all state-registered branding iron manufacturers, but found no leads. Meanwhile, Karina was severely criticized online for acquitting Liang Shangbin. Protest banners were hung at the courthouse entrance. Fortunately, Karina had Senator Jang protecting her, and she was only sent back to a separate courtroom. Her assistant reminded Karina that the landlady had sent a message organizing a hiking team building event for all tenants. Karina planned to attend, so she packed her things and finished her work. Karina witnessed two people bullying a classmate, and couldn't help but step in to help. Unexpectedly, the two of them attempted to fight back. Karina had no rule against hitting kids, and she immediately took action to teach them a lesson. Soon, this incident escalated to the police station. Coincidentally, the female student Karina saved turned out to be the daughter of the female officer Dohee. Because Karina had used violence against a minor while helping, their mothers were justified in their anger and intended to sue Karina for excessive force.
저분이 판사세요. 판사시라고 판사.
내친 김에 학폭위도 열어드려요?
The two gave up after hearing this. Dohee was very happy to receive protection. The female officer couldn't help but get angry at her, especially since the serial killer from years ago had just resurfaced near the Huangtian apartments. Her daughter had gone there alone, and just thinking about it scared her. Dohee had escaped everything but was still blamed, and she left the police station feeling wronged. In recent days, Domi was very troubled because of Karina. He sought out the mysterious old woman and asked her what she meant by her previous words. Why did she say that? One of us would definitely die if I was with Karina? The old woman explained. I was a friend of your parents and was entrusted to protect you. Although I can't reveal more details, you should leave the Huangtian apartments and never see Karina again. Now I have fulfilled my promise to remind you that the choice between life and death is yours to make. In the past, Domi would not have believed such unfounded words, but he had already died once at Karina's hands. Domi had witnessed her supernatural abilities, so he began to avoid Karina. Karina noticed the change and decided to participate in the team building event. Now Domi couldn't avoid her any longer and had to let go of his grievances. Domi thanked Karina, as she had saved Dohee. It was then that Karina learned Domi was not the biological son of the female officer. When he had said he killed 3 people, he was actually referring to his parents and younger brother. Domi had always felt that he was responsible for his family's deaths. Perhaps he was finally expressing his true feelings. Domi seemed relaxed today. When it came time for the evening meal, he even got drunk. Domi confessed his feelings to Karina, saying many ambiguous things. In the end, Domi collapsed to the ground and passed out. Karina carried Domi back home, and the drunk man was still talking. He had to arrest the criminal, but he hoped Karina wasn't the killer. Domi didn't want to be drawn to the devil, but he couldn't control his heart. Karina became visibly flustered upon hearing this, and got up to help Domi get a blanket. Karina discovered the can in the evidence bag. Seeing this, Karina felt disappointed. It turned out Domi had moved in just to investigate the case. He had even deceived her into lowering her guard. Karina instructed Gamori to expedite the investigation and find witnesses to the serial murders. She needed to complete her mission quickly and return to hell. As the plot progressed to this point, a new subplot was about to unfold. An annual business award ceremony was being held in a commercial building. The award recipient was Choi Won-young, the representative of KO Foods, who looked dapper in a suit. He might even rescue stray dogs, looking every bit the successful businessman. However, a large group of protesting employees had gathered outside the company. His father urged Choi Won-young to handle the strike issue properly.
네가 너무 사람이 좋으니까 아래 것들이 분수도 모르고 기어오르는 거야.
Choi Won-young invited the protest representatives for a talk. Everyone saw this as a good sign, and watched as the representative got into the car. Soon, the car arrived at Choi Won-young's private residence. He commanded the representative to sit down, as if training a dog. He then looked up, and gestured to a cage in the corner, which contained a taxidermied pet dog. Choi Won-young told the representative that he had once loved this little dog, but since it didn't obey, it ended up like this. The representative felt a chill run down his back. Upon hearing this, immediately afterward, Choi Won-young handed him a sum of money, intending to deal with these beggars. The representative spoke up, saying that in the past 3 years, 5 people had died in the factory. They weren't trying to extort the company, they just wanted a safe working environment. Upon hearing this, Choi Won-young picked up the kettle and joked, "Actually, we chaebols are just like ordinary people. We also lick yogurt lids and eat instant noodles," he said while bringing the kettle closer to the representative.
저 화나게 하지 마세요. 제가 갖고 싶은 걸 못 가져본 적이 없어서.
The representative hurriedly left in fear, clutching the staircase railing to steady his trembling legs. The representative was about to call his companions when a van suddenly pulled up, and several men in black got out. He was immediately taken away. When the representative woke up again, he found himself on a golf course. Choi Won-young was swinging a golf club, hitting ball after ball toward him. After the cruel torment ended, the representative limped away with a broken foot. He had lost his recorder when he fell, but he didn't turn back to retrieve it. A car drove up. The representative's wife and daughter, unable to reach him, soon went to the police station to report him missing. However, since he was an adult, and the time missing didn't meet the reporting criteria, the police could only send them home to wait. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed, and the news of the representative Won Chung-hyun's disappearance finally made the headlines. Karina was not interested in small cases, but the hell cleaners came to ask her to find Won Chung-hyun. They lived in the same community, and the old man was known for his kindness among the neighbors. He wouldn't have any enemies. They suspected that the owner of KO Foods was the killer, and that he might have murdered Won Chung-hyun. Mentioning the dead finally piqued Karina's interest. She wrote Won Chung-hyun's name on the glass, and the absence of any images indicated that he was already dead. Sure enough, not long after, hikers discovered Won Chung-hyun's body. Soon, the police called Choi Won-young to the station for questioning. They had found the recorder and uncovered a wire transfer record. The police had reason to suspect that Choi Won-young had resorted to murder to silence him after a bribery attempt failed. However, Choi Won-young claimed that he had only injured Won Chung-hyun, and the recording can only prove the violent behavior. It cannot prove that he killed Won Chung-hyun. Not long after, the chief also pressured the female officer to drop the case. The female officer, of course, would not compromise. Meanwhile, Choi Won-young's father, Chairman Choi, was kneeling on the ground, pleading for Senator Sang's help. He promised to give up a piece of land once the matter was settled. Senator Jang took the benefits and began to act. After receiving hints, the court superior privately indicated to Karina to acquit the defendant. During the trial, Choi Won-young appeared with 2 lawyers. The prosecution representing the defendant had also been bribed. Although the recording and street footage could prove that Choi Won-young had assaulted the victim, he falsely claimed that he had only injured the deceased. He also claimed that dragging Won Chung-hyun into the car to take him to the gym, the security captain, is too rough. His intention was just to invite the staff to play a ball. Having navigated the business world for many years, Choi Won-young was a cunning fox. The first trial had to end hastily, and there was no progress at the police station. Domi could only seek Karina's help, as the demon's abilities far surpassed those of a human. Although Karina had decided not to engage with him, she couldn't withstand Domi's pleas. Karina had to follow him to confirm the condition of the deceased. Karina held Won Chung-hyun's head and saw the circumstances he faced in life. He had indeed been strangled by Choi Won-young's subordinates. However, Karina lied to Domi, saying the deceased had committed suicide. Meanwhile, the female officer ignored the case at hand and was staking out the Hwangtian apartments. With Officer Dean, they hoped to catch the person who had killed Domi's parents years ago. Dean hadn't eaten dinner, and his stomach was growling. The female officer told him to go grab something to eat nearby. While she stayed in the car, Dean reminded her not to act alone, and she casually agreed. Unexpectedly, shortly after Dean left, a man in black appeared. The female officer reclined her seat and hid in the shadows. She caught a glimpse of a uniquely shaped weapon in the man's pocket. She immediately realized that this man was the killer. The female officer quickly contacted Dean, but his phone was unreachable. After hesitating, the female officer decided to pursue him with her baton. The man in black was preparing to ambush her in the corner, but to his surprise, the female officer was skilled, and after a few moves, he found himself at a disadvantage. The man in black could only turn and flee. The two chased each other through a narrow alley, and the female officer nearly got stabbed by the man in black, but she kept right on his tail. The female officer successfully cornered him in the alley. She had been waiting for this day for 25 years. Meanwhile, Domi and the others returned to the Huangtian apartments, where they spotted Dean nearby. He was wondering why the team leader in the car was missing. A gunshot rang out from the deep alley. Domi rushed in immediately, and along the way, he picked up the strange weapon, which was engraved with KSY. When Domi found the alley, he only saw a pool of blood on the ground. Soon, the disappearance of the active duty officer drew the attention of the higher-ups. The chief ordered that all available personnel be mobilized to find Officer Kim Jae-young. Preliminary identification by the forensic team confirmed that the blood at the scene belonged to Officer Kim Jae-young. To avoid hampering the investigation, the Major Crimes Unit under Jae-young was not allowed to participate in this case. They were to focus solely on other cases. Domi had no choice but to obey the orders, but he planned to visit Jae-young's home to check on Do-hee. His brother-in-law handed him a document saying that Jae-young had recently been reviewing the case of his family. She had also mentioned that the perpetrator seemed to have resurfaced. His brother-in-law said this not to blame Domi. He just hoped Domi wouldn't disappoint Jae-young's expectations, and that he would stay steadfast in his role. Karina noticed that Domi's appetite had been poor lately, so she wanted to use the mirror to check on Kim Jae-young, but at the last moment, she closed the mirror. Since Domi believed that Kim Jae-young was still alive, Karina also didn't want to see a bad outcome. Domi quickly texted her, wanting to invite Karina to investigate the case of Won Chang-hyun together. After talking with his brother-in-law, Domi felt he could no longer neglect his duties. He couldn't let Jae-young down. The two went to the home of a colleague of the deceased to gather information. Choi Won-young publicly claimed that Won Chang-hyun was a gambling addict, which was why he had used the strike to extort him. However, Won Chang-hyun's colleague said that he never gambled at all, but he was indeed short on money because his daughter had cancer, and the cost of medication was enormous. This colleague was planning to resign due to Won Chang-hyun's death, so he agreed to testify for Domi. However, on the day of the trial, the colleague changed his testimony. He accused Won Chang-hyun of extorting the company due to gambling debts. Clearly, he had been bribed by Choi Won-young. This round of questioning had to end hastily. In the evening, Senator Jang organized a gathering and invited Karina and Chairman Choi to dinner.
도박 관련 증거는 어떻게 만드신 거예요? 서류가 아주 예술이던데요.
일을 잘하더군요.
Karina swallowed her disgust and finished the meal. She went to the convenience store to find Gamori. He had found the witness information for the Jay's serial murder case. Karina opened the file and was surprised to find it was Domi. The case had made a breakthrough, but she couldn't feel happy about it. Karina didn't yet understand that this feeling was called heartache. Meanwhile, Gamori had already noticed her special attitude towards Domi. She had been secretly observing Karina's reactions. At this moment, Domi was unaware that the demon was feeling heartache for him. He instructed Dean to provide personal protection for Choi Won-young, because when Qing-jun, Pei Zi-yong, and Liang Shengbin had all died mysteriously after receiving lenient sentences from Karina. According to this pattern, Choi Won-young would be the next target. That was why he needed to protect Choi Won-young. Soon, Choi Won-young's case entered the final trial, due to insufficient evidence submitted by the prosecution, along with the defendant having paid bail to the court. Karina sentenced Choi Won-young to 1 year of imprisonment with a 2-year suspended sentence, and 40 hours of community service, under Article 281, Section 1 of the Criminal Law, for causing injury while in custody. Such a punishment was essentially nothing, as a suspended sentence meant he wouldn't actually serve time. Choi's daughter couldn't accept the reality, and fainted right in the courtroom. Upon seeing this, Karina felt uncomfortable. The journalists on site were furious, and wrote numerous reports criticizing Karina. However, Karina was indifferent to this, but Domi's eyes made her feel sad. On the other side, Won Chang-hyun's daughter hadn't received chemotherapy for too long, and the doctors believed there was no hope for her. Miraculously, she woke up, and the cancer cells had stopped spreading. The girl even received financial support from kind-hearted people, and she no longer had to worry about treatment costs. As for those who kidnapped Won Chang-hyun, they all died in a fire. This time, the one who took action was a janitor, who couldn't stand these people getting away with their crimes, so he took it upon himself to clean up the trash. They even donated 200 million won to the hospital to care for Won Chang-hyun's daughter. However, the miraculous improvement in her condition was not something they could control.
천사가 잠시 곁에 머물렀다 간 걸지도.
On the other side, Choi Won-young refused the protection offered by the police. Ironically, he was a devout Christian. Choi Won-young believed that the Lord would always protect him. Unbeknownst to him, Karina was already preparing to take action.
아저씨, 사람 죽이고 교회에서 기도하면 다예요? 아저씨가 죽이라고 시켰다는 증거 내가 갖고 있는데.
Her assistant used a voice changer to threaten Choi Won-young, saying if he didn't want the evidence made public, he should come to the amusement park near the golf course. If Choi Won-young dared to bring help, he would immediately post the evidence online. To ensure nothing went wrong, Choi Won-young had his men drive away to distract them. Officer Dean, who was waiting outside, watched as he headed to the amusement park alone. A clown jumped out to welcome Choi Won-young, while Gamori seized the opportunity to ambush him. He injected him with a dose of anesthetic. Karina was about to head out when Domi stopped her. He wanted to persuade the demon not to kill, and to hand the perpetrator over to the justice system. Karina countered Domi's argument by asking, "What if I could catch the person who killed your mother? The statute of limitations has expired. The law can't prosecute him now, so don't stop me anymore. Stand by my side." Upon hearing this, Domi stepped forward and hugged Karina, but he still couldn't accept her suggestion. When Choi Won-young regained consciousness, he found himself tied up at the golf course. The scene from a few days ago had reversed, and he had become a living target in front of Karina. The demon had exceptional skills, hitting every shot perfectly. Choi Won-young was knocked out and then revived, only to be knocked out again. After several cycles of this, he finally managed to escape the golf course. He was taken into the woods by the janitor to be hanged, mirroring what he had done to Won Chang-hyun. When Choi Won-young crawled out of the coffin, he found himself back at the amusement park. Karina had lost her patience and stepped forward to deliver the final judgment.
아니 그게 무슨 개소리야 이 판사 새끼야!
Karina snapped her fingers, and two dark beasts emerged from the walls. They charged towards Choi Won-young, who hurriedly ran into the ticket booth. One of the beasts jumped onto the kiosk, forcing Choi Won-young out. He crawled out and ran towards the Ferris wheel, but Karina flashed and followed him. She brutally beat Choi Won-young. Once he finally confessed to his crimes, Karina summoned the blade of judgment to kill him. She grabbed the corpse and threw it off the Ferris wheel, only for Domi to capture the scene on camera. It turned out that, during their earlier embrace, he had placed a tracking device on Karina. Domi once again took advantage of the demon's genuine feelings. As Karina prepared to move in to grab the phone, she was doused with sulfur powder. This substance could prevent the demon from using any powers for 2 hours. Domi had learned this from his assistant. Just as he was about to arrest Karina for murder, he received a call saying that Kim Jae-young had been found. After cuffing Karina, Domi hurriedly made his way to the scene. Unfortunately, Kim Jae-young had already been brutally murdered. The crime scene had the letter J drawn on it, reminiscent of the day his mother was killed decades ago. In 1999, Kim Jae-young was just a young officer, and that day she rushed to the scene. Kim Jae-young discovered pools of blood and bodies everywhere. Meanwhile, Domi was hiding in the bedroom, crying. As a police officer, she was supposed to comfort the child, but due to the complex emotions in her heart, she ended up shedding tears alongside him. Kim Jae-young didn't know how to explain things to Domi. From that moment on, she was determined to become a strong police officer and catch the murderer to avenge the victims. Later, she often visited Domi at school, where the boy was bullied for being an orphan. His fragile self-esteem was hurt, and Domi was reluctant to accept Kim Jae-young's help. But this female officer was determined not to give up. She often came with her husband, and they participated in Domi's school parent-child sports day. They won the boy's heart through their actions. They finally persuaded Domi to move in with them. Kim Jae-young filled the void left by his mother, but now the tragedy had repeated itself, and Domi was extremely angry. He returned to the amusement park. Domi picked up a rock and smashed the phone that recorded the evidence. Then he handed the remnants to Karina. Domi no longer cared about the police or the law. He only wanted the murderer to die. As long as he could kill the serial killer Jay, he was willing to die at Karina's hands and descend to hell alongside her. Karina was shocked. He did not feel happy. She had persuaded Domi, but her heart was in excruciating pain. A tear slipped from the demon's eye. Duan decided to collaborate with the devil. The two began investigating Officer Jin Ju-young's cause of death. Karina touched the forehead of the deceased, and the scene from the day of the incident unfolded. Jin Ju-young was shot in the leg and fell to the ground, followed by a knife wound to her shoulder. The image was about to reveal the killer, but Karina couldn't hold on anymore. She moved her hand away. At the funeral, Duan went on stage to give a speech. Unexpectedly, as the speech progressed, it suddenly started to rain. The rain became an excuse for Karina's tears. She grabbed Jemarie's hand. Karina exposed herself to the rain. Duan could no longer contain his excitement. He said he would personally catch the killer and kill him. Karina's tears flowed down like a waterfall. She suspected she was sick. Karina even went to see a doctor, since there was nothing wrong with her eyes. She then visited a psychiatrist. The doctor understood that the reason for Karina's tears. The doctor said she felt pity and love, which caused her to suddenly feel heartache and cry. Karina was about to refute, but the doctor quickly asked, if the man who made you cry disappeared from the world, what would you do? Karina's words were caught in her throat. She realized she was in trouble, and Jemarie noticed her change. That night, she stopped her assistant. Jemarie revealed her true identity and ordered her assistant to help monitor Karina's actions. The scene shifted back to the police station. Because of the J marking at Officer Jin Ju-young's death scene, the case was classified as part of the unsolved J serial murder case and transferred to the wide area investigation team for handling. The new Officer Lee replaced Jin Ju-young, taking over as the leader of Serious Case Group 2. He also brought in Detective Zhang Wenkai. The Serious Case Group 2 continued to handle the branded serial murder case, but Dawn's mindset was different from before. He already knew that Karina was the killer, and that she was specifically responsible for executing unrepentant criminals. Now, the two had formed a cooperative relationship. Dawn was no longer fixated on arresting Karina. He no longer cared about the law. Punishing criminals was the only right thing to do. Jin Ju-young's death changed Dawn. In the afternoon, Karina was worried that he wasn't eating. She invited Dawn to meet at a restaurant. They encountered passers-by discussing the police attack case. The two treated the tragedy as a curious anecdote. They cruelly commented on Jin Ju-young's death. Dawn was enraged upon hearing this. Karina was afraid he would be accused and lose his job. She deliberately stepped forward and smashed the passerby's phone. To divert attention, she pulled Dawn away. Unbeknownst to her, Jemarie was hiding nearby.
이제 아주 대놓고 데이트를 하시겠다.
Karina was getting deeper into trouble. She handed Jin Ju-young's photo to the cleaning team, asking them to investigate where Jin Ju-young and Dawn's family's souls were. Clearly, this hadn't been approved by the higher-ups in hell, but Karina knew the cleaning team had burned criminals without authorization. She held leverage over them, so they dared not disobey her orders. By evening, Karina and Dawn were sorting through the case clues. This was also her first time hearing about the tragic circumstances of Dawn's family's deaths. Although Karina wanted to respond with a yawn, her assistant realized that their boss was about to be in trouble. He quickly went to report to Jemarie. Unexpectedly, when the two met privately, they were spotted by the fortune-telling grandmother. From the previous episode, the grandmother healed the victim's family's cancer, indicating she is definitely not human, so she can see Jemarie's ill intentions. In the dead of night, the fortune-telling grandmother woke Karina and revealed her true form. She transformed into a winged boy, claiming to be the angel Gabriel. Such a powerful figure. Could the props team not do better? The makeup and styling weren't even as good as those at an otaku convention. Gabriel had been lurking among the common people, repeatedly influencing the course of events, preventing more victims from appearing. When Dawn's family was killed back then, he was also present at the scene, disguised as a police officer, and accidentally heard Dawn's mother's prayers.
제 아들 다운이를 지켜주세요.
Gabriel realized that Jin Ju-yeon wanted to care for this child, so he deliberately got close to her to help the couple adopt Dawn. But angels can only protect the kind and pitiful. From the moment Dawn decided to kill, Gabriel could no longer use her angelic powers to protect him. So now, only Karina could protect Dawn. Furthermore, Gabriel said, his prophecy would not be wrong. One of either Karina or Dawn would definitely die. At the same time, the landlord of Hwangtian apartment suddenly seemed a bit off. That day, she was hosting Minjun for a meal. The latter had a stomachache and rushed to the bathroom.
거긴 들어가면 안 돼.
The landlady also had secrets of her own. Minjun was unaware of anything amiss. The next day, he happily went to school as usual. Just then, Jang Iyuan's second son, Shan-hu, suddenly drove over. Gabriel quickly knocked over a cart, deliberately attracting nearby students, which prevented a major disaster. Minjun's mother was still unaware of the incident. She had just gotten off work and returned to the apartment. She kept thanking the landlord for preparing breakfast for Minjun every day. Both women had lost their husbands, so Minjun's mother has always been grateful for the care of the landlady. At this moment, the TV station was reporting on the serial killer Jay, who had resurfaced after 25 years. Unexpectedly, the landlady became dazed upon hearing this. She dropped the plate she was holding. On the other side, Shan-hu was detained by the police for causing trouble. Jang Iyuan immediately arranged a restaurant and invited the court president and Karina to dinner. Karina stayed with them, but it only made her lose her appetite. Karina directly stated that she would help Shan-hu secure a 4-year suspended sentence. As for payment, they could discuss it later. After saying this, she prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, Jang Taikai chased after her. He wanted to know why Jiang Guangna had suddenly changed her attitude, as if she had become a different person.
강빛나는 절대로 황춘동처럼 거지 같은 곳에서 살 위인이 못 돼요.
From Jiang Taikai's words, it was clear that Jiang Guangna was a person who loved the rich and despised the poor. However, Karina had a poor impression of the Zhang family. She didn't want them to learn about her true identity from their mouths. So Karina left Jiang Taikai behind. The reason Karina agreed to get involved in Shan-hu's case was because, after seeing the news about the incident, her repressed abilities suddenly returned. Karina was sure that Shan-hu was the one in the alley who stabbed Jin Ju-young. Meanwhile, Duan repeatedly interfered with the investigation. He wanted to prevent his colleagues from finding out about Karina. Detective Zhang Wenkai suddenly received a call that a surveillance camera had been found at Haishi River. Haishi River is where Karina killed Pei Ziyong. Normally, the surveillance camera wouldn't keep footage for 3 months, but last year, the boss's car was hit, so he became more vigilant. The boss intentionally installed a machine that kept recordings for the longest time. Zhang Wenkai was about to check when he suddenly needed to go to the bathroom. Duan took the opportunity to send the boss away. He quickly flipped through the surveillance footage from the day of the incident. Duan saw Karina's red sports car. He deleted the footage directly. When Zhang Wenkai returned, he found that the most important segment was missing. However, he had already noticed Duan's little actions. Zhang Wenkai confessed that he could help Duan keep it a secret, but from then on, Duan had to follow his orders. In the evening, Zhang Wenkai arrived at the place where Gemma-ri worked. He said, "You guessed correctly. Han Duan already knows everything, but he still concealed it for Karina."
그럼 바이님의 명령대로 한다운을 죽여주십시오.
죽여야지.
It turned out that not long ago, Gemma-ri summoned Ball. She reported that someone was hindering Karina, so Gemma-ri pleaded with Ball to deal with Duan. Upon hearing this, he immediately sent Paimon to confirm. As for the real detective Zhang Wenkai, he had already died in the field. The current Zhang Wenkai is actually Paimon. That night, he stopped Karina outside the Hwangtian apartment. Unfortunately, Karina didn't recognize Paimon. Karina warned him not to harm Han Duan. Paimon never expected that the cold-faced judge from hell would develop feelings for a human. The next day, Shan-hu's accident case began to be heard because he drove after using illegal drugs, and the accident occurred in a school zone. The nature of the case was severe. Logically, he should never be sentenced to just 4 years of probation, but Karina planned to deal with him personally, so she sentenced the defendant to the lightest punishment. Unexpectedly, Zhang Shanhu was still unhappy. In the evening, he put down the photo of himself with his mother and took out the diamond-shaped weapon from the safe. He was plotting something in his mind. On the other side, Gamari asked Karina when they would act. She only wanted her idol to complete the task and return to hell early, forgetting Han Duan. But this time, Karina was very cautious, because, to be precise, she only saw Shanhu holding the knife, standing next to Jin Zhaoing. She didn't witness the act of violence. Moreover, Jay had never killed anyone with a gun, yet Jin Zhaoing was shot. Gamari countered. Anyway, Shanhu is not a good person. We can kill him first. Then we'll see if Shanhu is the murderer. Karina certainly wouldn't accept her suggestion.
죽은 경찰이 한다원이랑 가까운 사이라서 더 정확하게 처리하고 싶으신 거예요?
Karina didn't catch her accusation. She also warned Gamari not to touch Han Duan. Karina had now dealt with 4 criminals, who collectively had committed 7 murders, and the serial killer Jay had killed 13 people. If Shanhu really is the murderer, as long as they take him out, the 20 tasks assigned by Bali could be completed. Karina could return to her old life, but she was not happy at all. On the other side, Councilman Jang was happy about his second son's probation sentence. He was quite pleased. He even smoothed things over for Karina regarding the incident with the passerby's phone. However, the principal, to quell public opinion, suspended Karina for a month. This gave Karina time to study the case. During this time, the assistant discovered a problem. Jay specifically cut off different body parts of each victim. Hearing this, Karina immediately thought of Satan. Do you remember the story of Satan escaping from hell? He stole Lucifer's treasure, the Kirin, and fled to the human world, hiding inside a human body. But humans experience aging and death. Satan, hiding in a human shell, would also die along with them. To avoid this situation, besides the treasure Kirin, Satan also needed good people, different body parts. In simple terms, Satan could be hiding in the body of the serial killer Jay, using various murders to achieve his goals. Just as they were in a heated discussion, the chubby officer and his subordinate also did not give up investigating Karina. The two were convinced she was the culprit behind the branding iron case, but they could never find any evidence, so they started their investigation from scratch. After Zhang Guangna was attacked last December, the police found no witnesses or surveillance footage. They only knew that the last person she contacted was Zhang Taiqiu. The officer suddenly remembered a reporter named Zhao Yalan, who was primarily responsible for writing reports on Judge Zhang Guangna. Perhaps they could start their investigation with her. The next day, it was the turn of the Serious Case Group 2 to present their case report. Although Paimon and Duan concealed the fact that the footage had been deleted, the former had already restored the deleted videos. Duan pressed him, demanding to know what he really wanted.
늘 궁금했어요. 인간은 자신의 목적을 위해서 어디까지 악해질 수 있는지.
Because a colleague arrived on the rooftop, Duan had no choice but to let Paimon go for now. But that footage was like a ticking time bomb. Duan needed to resolve this issue. In the afternoon, he followed Karina to visit the families of the victims of the Jay serial murder case, to confirm that they had not forgiven the murderer. This way, Karina could proceed with the trial. Hyo Young-suk's parents were killed by Jay in 1998. The bodies were discovered 3 days later. Hyo Young-suk had been waiting for the day the murderer was caught. Unfortunately, until the statute of limitations expired, he was never able to wait for that day. He became self-destructive and turned into an alcoholic. The two visited multiple victims' families in succession. They were all very disappointed and angry. No one would forgive the murderer. At this time, the cleaning team found information about Jin Ju-young. They handed a scroll to Karina. Jemori took assistant to meet Paimon. The two would fully cooperate with his actions, but Jemori requested not to harm Karina, only to kill Han Dawn. Upon hearing this, Paimon recalled his conversation with Bal. If he wanted to kill a human, he must first make the other party a criminal. Paimon was very confident about this, but he wouldn't let Karina off the hook. Paimon had been an enemy of Karina before, and they were also rivals for Bale's successor position. The assistant was worried he would harm Karina.
한다고만 죽이고 돌아가신다고 약속하셨어.
악마가 한 약속을 믿으세요?
Jemori's thinking was straightforward. She believed that, as long as Han Dawn was killed, her idol would return to normal. So Jemori warned the assistant not to cause trouble. Meanwhile, Jing Tai-kai, in order to develop the case, sought to negotiate with the landlady's daughter Xiaowen. Unexpectedly, she didn't care about money at all. She also said her mother had the right to deal with her own assets. Jing Tai-kai changed his tone and said, "A murder had occurred near the Huangtian apartment. Your mother lives there and is safe." Upon hearing this, Xiaowen felt somewhat worried, so the next day, she went to the apartment to find her mother. She wanted her mother to sign the contract, but the landlord immediately refused.
죽은 오빠가 귀신 돼서 엄마 찾아오기라도 할까봐? 아니면 내 말 듣고 사인해. 이럴 때라도 엄마 노릇 좀 해보라고.
It turned out that the landlady had a deceased son. Because of this, she had neglected her daughter, resulting in a cold relationship between them. Soon after, Karina and Duan arrived. It turned out that the landlady's deceased son Li Zan, he was also a victim of the J serial murder case. The room that Minjun almost accidentally entered that day was Li Zan's bedroom. The room still retained the appearance of how it was when he was alive. The landlady was busy working at the restaurant every day, hoping her child would get into college, but what she received instead was the tragic reality of Li Zan's death. For a long time, she had been in poor condition. She didn't even know when her daughter would advance in school. The landlady's soul left because of her son's death, until one day, she heard the church bells and picked up her faith again to continue living. The landlady's biggest dream was to face the murderer and ask him why he harmed Li Zan. Soon, Karina met with all the families. She also went to see the house where Duan used to live. As a demon, Karina should not have any emotions, yet now she felt troubled. Karina told Duan she had looked into the information about Duan's parents and Jin Ju-young. They were all in heaven. If he wanted to reunite with his family, Duan must not do anything that would lead him to fall into hell. As for the serial killer Jay, I will find him for you and personally kill him. In the evening, Karina arrived at Shanhu's bar. The assistant, under Jemarie's threat, quickly hid her phone. He didn't know Karina found Shanhu and pressed him about whether he was Satan. Shanhu completely didn't understand and asked Karina to just kill him, since he didn't want to live in this world anymore. Karina loosened her grip upon hearing this. Shanhu's behavior indeed didn't seem like Satan. On the other side, the assistant followed Jemarie's instructions and used Karina's phone to lure Duan in front of Paimon. But after doing all this, the assistant began to regret it. He wanted to report to Karina, but she hadn't returned from the bar yet. At a critical moment, Gabriel suddenly appeared. The two went to the bar to find Karina. The assistant immediately knelt and apologized. Then he informed Karina about Duan's location. She quickly left, but Duan had already met with Paimon. He was naturally no match for the demon. Fortunately, Paimon could not easily kill humans. He could only deliberately provoke Duan to lead him into committing a crime. At this critical moment, Karina finally arrived at the scene. She threw Paimon several meters away. Karina confirmed that Duan was okay. Then she vented her anger on Paimon. Whether before or now, Karina never took him seriously. The two picked up weapons and began to fight. Paimon was being beaten to the brink of death. He suddenly had an idea. Paimon pulled Karina into a dream illusion. He transformed into Duan's appearance. Paimon knew that this human was Karina's Achilles heel. The deadly blade was about to pierce her body. Duan's shout pulled Karina back to reality. She punched Paimon away. Then Karina picked up a weapon. She pinned him against the wall. Karina helped Duan up, preparing to leave. Paimon suddenly launched a sneak attack. Duan stepped forward to shield Karina. Fortunately, Gamari appeared in time and intervened. Karina immediately stabbed Paimon. Immediately after, she slapped Gamari twice. Karina understands why the other party deceived her. She also thanks Gamari for being willing to protect her. But Karina cannot forgive. She wants to kill Duan. Karina warns Gamari to leave here. Do not approach Handowen. The cleaners quickly arrived to clean up the scene and sealed Paimon with an official seal, unless Ball intervenes. Otherwise, Paimon will not appear again. But Karina violates the ban and falls in love with a human. Ball cannot ignore this. Fortunately, he didn't kill Karina directly, but took away all her powers. He made Karina live as a human, to atone in the human world, and then face severe punishment. On the other hand, because of Paimon's death, Duan undergoes investigation by the police. After all, this demon disguised as a police officer. He even met with Duan before his death, but the police didn't find any evidence. They couldn't punish Duan. Next, he and Karina are ready to continue investigating Zhang Shanhu to confirm if this person is Satan and the murderer Jay. However, Karina now has no powers. She can only think of other ways to get close to Shanhu. So the next day, she goes with a gift to visit. Karina earnestly asks Counselor Jang to marry her to Shanhu. Of course, Karina needs to find a suitable reason. She frankly admits that she's been short on money lately, so Karina wants to build a relationship to get closer to Counselor Jang. Taking this opportunity to enter politics, Counselor Jang worries about Shanhu every day. Someone has taken the initiative to solve the problem. Of course, he was very happy, so Counselor Jang agreed, allowing the two young people to date first. Shanhu dare not defy his father, but he still left the dining table unhappily. Karina made an excuse to go to the restroom and caught up. She saw Shanhu leaving the secret room. Karina quietly noted the location of the mechanism. Then she left the Zhang family. The scene switches to the chubby officer. He met with journalist Zhao Yalan and another officer. The latter didn't find anything wrong with Jiang Guangna. However, a few days after she was attacked, the Zhang family announced the cancellation of the engagement. The journalist felt that the two events were too close. She had previously published an article and suspected that the attack was related to the Zhang family, but soon the journalist's article was rejected from above. The editor also refused to say more. Duan decided to assist the chubby officer to go to Yenshan University Hospital. It is said that Jiang Guangna has been recuperating there. The police investigation revealed Jiang Guangna was attacked on the evening of December 20th. She had visited Counselor Zhang the day before, and even before the incident occurred, Jiang Guangna had sent a text message to Zhang Taikue. The officer speculated whether on the 19th, Jiang Guangna went to the Zhang family to cancel the engagement, but they didn't reach an agreement. So before the attack, she was still texting Zhang Taikue, and the Zhang family might have been very angry. They might have directly killed Jiang Guangna. Of course, these are just speculations. The two decided to confirm first whether Zhang Taikue has an alibi and also investigate Shanhu. After the chubby officer calmed down, he ended the Cold War with Duan. The chubby officer said frankly, although I still suspect Jiang Guangna, but at least we need to solve the assault case first. Duan decided to assist the chubby officer, so he went to Yenshan University Hospital to visit Professor Li Zhihui in charge of Jiang Guangna. But the doctor has a responsibility to protect patient privacy, on the premise of not violating professional ethics. He could only tell Duan that a man had come to the hospital looking for Jiang Guangna. Upon hearing this, Duan immediately took out a photo of the Zhang brothers. The professor immediately recognized Zhang Shanhu and said it was that person. Shanhu looked very uneasy at the time. He was even dressed in all black. The professor had previously mentioned this person to the police, but the police had said the investigation was halted, so this lead was abandoned. Professor Li's testimony deepened suspicions against Shanhu. However, there is one point that doesn't make sense. If Shanhu is really the murderer, why didn't he dismember Jiang Guangna? Karina needs more concrete evidence. On that day she was about to return to the apartment, but Karina saw the landlady walking alone in the heavy rain. Evidently, the killer of her son has reappeared, completely breaking down this woman. She had just mustered the courage to greet Karina, and then lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Karina quickly took her back home. She used wet tissues to help the landlady. Although Karina's actions were perfunctory, she still endured discomfort to take care of the patient, and even picked up the Bible for the landlady. Since the other party had regained consciousness, Karina was about to leave, but the landlady suddenly said, "I've seen the killer." It was also a rainy day. She was afraid her son would get cold in the rain. The landlady took an umbrella to the cemetery. She saw a man in black standing in front of a grave. He was holding a white flower. The landlady instantly thought this person was the killer. She rushed over and grabbed him to question, but the man was much stronger than the landlady. In the end, he broke free and escaped. The landlady knew Karina was a judge. In her narrow understanding, judges are the agents of justice who punish wrongdoers. So the landlady knelt before Karina. She cried and begged Karina to catch the prisoner, to punish this demon with the law. Karina's emotions were complex. She decided to sneak into the Zhang family's secret room to investigate, but her assistant knew she had lost her powers. In case of an accident, she could really lose her life. But Karina had made up her mind, because no one else could get close to the Zhang family. The next day, Karina arranged to have dinner with Counselor Zhang at 7 o'clock. The Zhang father and son thought it was still early. They planned to spend more time at the golf course. Little did they know, Karina had already arrived at the villa. The butler knew she was coming, so he didn't ask more questions. Karina questioned whether Senator Zhang was present or not. The housekeeper truthfully answered, "He and the young master are playing basketball. The only one at home is Shanhu, who has taken sleeping pills." Upon hearing this, Karina handed a few banknotes to the housekeeper, asking her to go to the department store to buy an egg tart. The housekeeper hesitated. The department store is not only far away, but also the house cannot be left unattended. Karina immediately assumed the posture of a mistress. I am about to become a member of this family. I can help you with the household chores. Upon hearing this, the housekeeper could only take the money and leave. Karina quickly went upstairs. Little did she know, Zhang Shanhu hadn't slept at all, but was instead secretly observing on the second floor. Karina approached the bookshelf without realizing it, and triggered a mechanism and opened a secret room. The secret room is pitch black with no signal. She walked through the hallway into the spacious space. Karina found a familiar painting on the wall. She carefully entered a bedroom, but the drawer cabinet was empty, and there was no useful information. However, there was a photo of a mother and son on the table. It seemed to be Shanhu and his mother. Karina didn't find anything and was about to leave, but then she noticed the candle in the painting had been extinguished. Karina cautiously reached out to touch the canvas. She discovered that there was actually a different space inside. The door in the painting suddenly enlarged. Karina couldn't help but step into the canvas space. She opened the iron door and entered the secret room. Karina opened the wooden box in the center of the table. Inside lay a uniquely shaped axe. It was likely one of the weapons used by the murderer Jay. As Karina approached the wall, motion sensor lights came on. All sorts of limbs were placed in the cold storage. This scene completely ignited Karina's anger, but soon there were noises coming from outside. Karina quickly closed the iron door and stepped out of the canvas. She hurriedly left the basement. Shanhu suddenly launched a surprise attack. At the same time, the chubby police officer also uncovered some clues. On the day Jiang Guangna was attacked, Shanhu was seen taking a taxi at the scene. Such clear evidence and yet no one mentioned it. Obviously, Senator Zhang covered up for his son. Duan wanted to tell Karina about this clue, but he couldn't reach her on the phone. Duan could only contact his assistant to inquire about Karina's whereabouts. Upon learning that she was on a solo adventure, Duan went straight to the Zhang residence. Although Karina had lost her magical powers, her ability to react to danger remained. She grabbed a baseball bat ready to strike Shanhu. The latter managed to hide inside the painting, leaving Karina puzzled. She was knocked unconscious by Shanhu, who snatched her baseball bat. When she woke up, she found herself tied up in the bedroom. Karina looked around and saw scratch marks on the wooden door by the wall. She intentionally steered the conversation towards Jiang Guangna. Karina asked Shanhu why he wanted to assassinate the other party. The scene shifted to December of last year, when Jiang Guangna was waiting for Senator Zhang. She happened to open the secret room. Jiang Guangna also entered this bedroom. She also noticed a camera placed in front of the television. Guangna couldn't help but play it and discovered it was a video of Zheng Tai Kuei abusing Shanhu's mother. It turned out that the woman had been imprisoned in this bedroom, hence the scratch marks on the wooden door. Before Jiang Guangna could finish watching the video, Zheng Tai Kuei walked in. Guangna quickly said goodbye and leave quickly, but how could Tai Kuei let her go? It happened to be the day Shanhu was having a drug relapse, and Zheng Tai Kuei bribed him with a packet of flour. He instructed this drug addict to kill Jiang Guangna. Before her death, Jiang Guangna sent a text message to Zheng Tai Kuei to call off the engagement. That was the sequence of events. At this moment, Shanhu tackled Karina and wanted to kill her. At a critical moment, Duan arrived just in time. Jemery handed him a design plan of the Zheng family villa. She informed Duan that Karina had lost her powers. Upon hearing this, he felt the situation was critical and rushed into the mansion. He broke into the basement to rescue the person. While Shanhu afraid and tried to escape, Karina stopped Duan, who was about to chase after. She explained that Zhang Shanhu was not the culprit, and that the real Jay should be Senator Zhang or Zheng Tai Kuei. When the father and son returned home, they only saw ambulances and police cars parked outside. The police were still there, and they couldn't afford to get angry. The next day, Jemery was called to the hospital, and Karina forgave her for her past mistakes. She even let Jemery slap her twice. Unexpectedly, this fellow was also quite rude. She nearly knocked Karina's jaw off. Now that they had the Zhang family in their grasp, Karina acted immediately. She summoned Baal with blood, stating that she had found Satan. Upon hearing this, Baal returned his powers to Karina, urging her to capture Satan quickly. The first thing Karina did after recovering was to go settle the score with Zheng Shanhu. When Zheng Shanhu was found by the police, he had already burned to charcoal in the car. The body was so damaged that the identity couldn't be confirmed visually. The police could only wait for the results of the autopsy. The police found a note at the scene that said, "My father and brother killed me." Soon, the Zhang father and son went to the police station for questioning. Zhang Taikui claimed that he was at home on the day of the incident. However, all the cameras in the house were turned off when Karina was imprisoned by Zhang Shanhu, so the police couldn't confirm whether Zhang Taikui was lying. Counselor Zhang put on a sorrowful expression. He said no matter how incompetent his son may be, to him, he is a precious existence.
그렇게 소중한 자식 DNA 감식 결과도 나오기도 전에 장례식부터 하십니까?
Both the father and son are adept at shifting blame. Mere questioning doesn't yield information. According to preliminary investigations, it is known that, on the day Karina was imprisoned, Zhang Taikui was meeting with a congressman at the golf course. It was said they were discussing legislative matters. As for the DNA identification results of the body, they will be available in 3 days, which coincides with the day of the funeral. 3 days passed quickly. Karina specifically wore new clothes to attend the funeral. She interrupted the hypocritical father and son, saying, "No need to pretend in front of me. You clearly are not sad at all." While the funeral is ongoing here, the police received the identification results from the National Forensic Service. They learned that the deceased was not Zhang Shanhu, but a fugitive who disappeared 10 years ago. The chubby police officer was preparing to go to Gangwon province to investigate the crime scene. Unexpectedly, Zhang Shanhu appeared.
선호 도련님이 지금 경찰서에 있다고 합니다.
What exactly happened in the middle of this? Let's temporarily go back to 4 days ago. After Karina was discharged from the hospital, she went to Gangwon province to find Shanhu. Karina didn't intend to kill him, but because Shanhu had evidence of the J serial killings, namely that the axe hidden in a wooden box, Shanhu carried the evidence with him like a treasure. Just as an extra layer of security, Karina asked him to take the evidence to the police station, confessing which of the Zhang family members is Jay. In return, Karina would help Shanhu's mother seek revenge. If he didn't cooperate, he would be killed by his father or brother. But Shanhu didn't believe Karina. She then said, "Let's make a bet." She asked Shanhu to contact his family first to see if Counselor Zhang or Zhang Taikui would save him. When Zhang Taikui received his brother's plea for help, he did send bodyguards to assist. But Zhang Taikui's intention wasn't to save Shanhu. He wanted to kill him and take the evidence. Fortunately, Karina was prepared in advance, and had Gamwar and others block their path. They helped Shanhu deal with the bodyguards. Now that his own family had cut off his escape route, Shanhu had no choice but to cooperate with Karina. The cleanup team was very skilled. They arranged for the body of a criminal, who died 10 years ago to be used. With a touch of dark technology, the body appeared as if it had just died yesterday. Shanhu also wrote a suicide note as required. Karina orchestrated this fake death event to deceive the Zhang family and buy time, so that Shanhu could successfully surrender to the police. Karina lit gasoline and discarded the farewell letter. She then left the scene directly. Doesn't this farewell letter need a stone to weigh it down? It could easily be blown far away by a gust of wind. Time returns to the present. Shanhu arrived at the police station with the murder weapon. He was willing to accept punishment for imprisoning Karina, but he still refused to reveal who Jay was. Fortunately, the axe was sent to the National Science and Technology Forensic Laboratory. The truth will come to light in 3 days. Because of Shanhu's surrender, the development plan for the Huangtian cave was forced to halt. Politicians dared not get involved. They were all trying to distance themselves. Zhang Taikui was also worried that his brother might reveal sensitive secrets. He instructed his men to rescue him from the police station. The latter mentioned that there was news from the Lufeng police station that Shanhu had submitted the murder weapon when he surrendered, claiming it was evidence in the serial killings. Upon hearing this, Zhang Taikui was indeed furious. Bad news kept coming in one after another. After the chubby officer restored the surveillance footage from the golf course, he obtained evidence of Zhang Taikui bribing congressmen with the intention of illegally developing the Huangtian cave. Thus, they could summon Zhang Taikui for investigation. Furthermore, it's worth noting that the news about Shanhu submitting the axe as evidence was intentionally leaked by Duan, because Karina wanted to use this to force the killer to reveal themselves. Zhang Taikui didn't realize he had been tricked. He angrily went to get angry with Counselor Zhang.
우린 공범인데?
아니지, 태규야. 그건 네가 저지른 짓이지.
Taikui seemed to have anticipated that he would be betrayed. Taikui then mentioned a crucial clue. The treasure Kalen that you dropped when escaping from hell actually fell next to the Huangtian apartments, and I have already found it. The meaning of this statement is that Counselor Zhang is Satan, but the tasks of murder and dismemberment were all assigned to Zhang Taikui. neither of them is innocent. In order to retrieve Kaylin, he can only go to the basement as instructed by Teki to confirm if the axe is still in the painting's secret room, and there was indeed nothing on the iron table. Ordinary people cannot open or enter alternate spaces, which means someone helped Shanhu. Except for Judge Jiang Guangna, there was no one else at the Zheng family villa that day, so the conclusion is clear. Jiang Guangna had long been replaced by extraterrestrial beings. The counselor Zhang laughed and opened a hidden door, revealing the mummified corpse of Shanhu's mother. He said, "I will release you immediately." Tai Kuei became very angry upon hearing that the axe was missing. The counselor Zhang reminded him that Jiang Guangna was a demon, and he didn't have the power to fight her. "Now quickly hand over Kaylin, and I will give you all my assets to help you leave the country." Tai Kuei was not willing to trust him easily. The counselor Zhang could only suggest, "Then let's exchange at the airport. Give Kaylin to his henchman, and then you can leave the country immediately." That night, Karina frequently monitored the movements of the Zhang father and son through the mirror. She unexpectedly discovered that Kaylin was hidden beneath the model in the Huangtian apartments. Karina immediately took action. The counselor Zhang handed over prepared documents and fake passports to Tai Kuei. The latter also presented Kaylin, proving he had not lied. Zheng Tai Kuei is not afraid of Satan stealing the treasure on the spot. It's because when demons enter the human body, once the body dies, the demons inside will also be eliminated together. Tai Kuei is not afraid of anything that can be killed by a pistol. Poor Satan firmly believed that humans would not kill their fathers, but the next moment he was pierced by a bullet. Tai Kuei is not foolish. His real father died 26 years ago. The person in front of him is fake. Tai Kuei took Kaylin to the airport, but he was stopped by airport staff as soon as he got off the car. As expected, these should be Satan's people who saw that Tai Kuei was unwilling to hand over Kaylin. They started fighting directly at the airport. The beautiful stewardess stabbed him in the thigh, with a horrifying smile on her face. Then the illusion disappeared. It turns out Tai Kuei never left the villa. He was just under Satan's illusion. Tai Kuei mistakenly thought he had killed the demon, and arrived at the airport. Satan did not intend to kill Tai Kuei, because spending the rest of his life in prison is a more cruel punishment than a quick death. Satan happily took Kaylin and left. Meanwhile, the National Science Investigation sent the identification results, except the victim's DNA on the axe. Tai Kuei's DNA was also found. He is the serial killer J. The police acted immediately, and Duan also informed Karina of the results. Unfortunately, the two fell into a misunderstanding, thinking that the serial killer Jay and Satan were the same person. At this time, Tai Kuei bandaged his wound and escaped from the villa. When Karina arrived at the scene, all she saw was a floor covered in blood. The scene changed. Satan had already assembled the remains, and was about to implant Kaylin into a new body for eternal life. The next moment, Karina grabbed his wrist, and the truth that he was Satan was finally revealed. Karina immediately summoned the Blade of Judgment, ready to send Satan to hell. Satan suddenly shouted Duan's name, and asked Karina if she didn't want to know how Tai Kuei became the serial killer Jay. Upon hearing this, Karina stopped her actions, and as Satan narrated, events from 26 years ago came to light. At that time, he was injured while fleeing to the mortal world, and unfortunately lost Kaylin. While wandering, Satan encountered Tai Kuei, who was just an unpopular illegitimate child. When he was young, since his mother's death, he had no one to rely on. Tai Kuei finally managed to get into Seoul University, and wanted his father's approval. But the counselor Jang still believed his birth was a mistake, and asked Tai Kuei to leave quickly, to avoid being seen by his wife and son. Unexpectedly, this angered Tai Kuei completely. He picked up the ashtray and smashed counselor Zhang to death. When Tai Kuei woke up, he realized he had caused trouble. Satan appeared at this moment, and saw Tai Kuei's inner desires. Satan promised him money and status, but Tai Kuei had to become his tool, to help Satan kill and dismember. The fact proved that Tai Kuei was a natural-born killer. Later, their deal was exposed by Shanhu's mother. Tai Kuei locked her in the basement to starve to death. Then he continued to find new targets. Killing was like a hunting game to him. The happy and loving Duan family quickly caught Tai Kuei's eye. He disguised himself as a gas worker, and brutally killed Duan's parents and younger brother. The story comes to a conclusion here. Satan could see what Karina desired the most, so he tempted her. "I can give you Kaylin and a new body. Don't you want to stay by Duan's side forever in a human form?" Before she could respond, he pulled Karina into an illusion, where she experienced happiness living with Duan. Just as Karina let her guard down, Satan immediately awakened Shanhu's mother. The corpse, devoid of sensation, was ferocious. Luckily, Karina quickly adjusted. she used a knife to deal with the body. Satan tried to assemble Kaylin in the chaos, but Karina kicked him, and even as he faced death, Satan tried to warn her, "Don't trust Baal, it's the demon among demons."
틀렸어. 악마 중에 악마는 나야.
Satan was forced to leave his physical form. His soul would not perish immediately. The final battle began. Although the ranking of demon powers was unclear, Satan was completely overpowered by Karina. Being beaten like a punching bag, Karina summoned the gates of hell, and forcefully threw Kaylin over. Satan hurried over to catch it. Unexpectedly, Karina seized the opportunity to stab him. His soul was sucked into the gates of hell. The fight on this side is over. The police arrived only after the fight. Karina contacted Duan and explained that Tai Kuei was trying to escape. He is currently at Incheon port. Duan sneaked onto the black ship to ambush Tai Kuei, facing the murderer of his parents and younger brother. He couldn't contain his rage. Duan had been waiting for this day for 25 years. Tai Kuei laughed and said, "Why are you just like that Officer Kim, liking these vulgar lines?" The person Kim Soo-young chased that day was indeed young Shan-hu, but the one who shot and injured her and kidnapped her was actually Tai Kuei. Kim Soo-young is a very skilled detective. Even if captured, she quickly regained control, but she values rules too much. Kim Soo-young is not willing to shoot criminals casually. She just wants to handcuff Tai Kuei and take him back to the station. Kim Soo-young was ambushed by Shan-hu from behind. As she neared death, she picked up an iron nail. She stabbed Tai Kuei's name into her wrist and left the letter J as a clue. Unfortunately, Tai Kuei noticed her actions. The arm where she carved was cut off. The brutal description enraged Duo-won. He picked up the iron anchor from the ground and smashed it towards Tai Kuei. Duo-won subdued the other party to the ground. He picked up a fire extinguisher. Duo-won was about to smash Tai Kuei to death, but before acting, he had promised Karina, just as he had promised Officer Kim Soo-young before that, he wouldn't stain his hands with blood. He wouldn't disgrace the profession of a police officer. So Duo-won didn't act. Instead, he contacted his colleagues to arrest Tai Kuei. As for the owner of this smuggling ship, it was transformed by the Archangel Gabriel. Thanks to his help, Tai Kuei didn't escape by sea, although Duo-won lost his parents. Fortunately, he met many people as he grew up. Soon after, Tai Kuei's case was reviewed. Karina was planning to hold a trial. Unexpectedly, Baal suddenly visited. He remembered that Karina had captured Satan, and Baal was willing to overlook past mistakes. However, Karina had to release Tai Kuei, to then personally execute him. Otherwise, she would be dragged to hell, facing the most terrible death. What choice will Karina ultimately make? On the eve of the trial, Shan-hu needed to appear as a witness. He was just about to take action when an inmate lunged at him in a surprise attack. Shan-hu was stabbed in the neck and began to bleed. Karina quickly received the news. She had no choice but to announce a temporary halt to the trial, because the witness who was supposed to attend today had an unexpected situation. The first public trial would be postponed for 2 days. It was obvious that Jang Taikuei must have sent someone to assassinate Shan-hu in the detention center. Fortunately, the toothbrush handle wasn't sharp enough, and Shan-hu had already been sent to the hospital. The police also searched the entire Jang family villa, but they did not find the videotape that Shan-hu mentioned, which could not prove that Jang Taikuei killed his stepmother. After being stabbed, Shan-hu wanted to back out. He was already afraid of his brother, and now he was even more reluctant to testify. Karina was not surprised when she learned this. Such cowardly people could not accomplish great things. Duan couldn't help but ask, "How did you come to be in charge of Jang Taikuei's case?" In fact, Karina had spoken to him in advance, telling Jang Taikuei, "I can release you, but you must kill for me, and then cut the body into pieces for me." Jang Taikuei thought she wanted to achieve immortality, and viewed Karina as a demon like Satan, so Jang Taikuei agreed without much thought. Besides that, Karina mentioned the issue of the videotape. Jang Taikuei certainly wouldn't reveal its whereabouts, but he mentioned those are masterpieces. Karina speculated that Jang Taikuei might have a habit of recording the act of killing. Those tapes likely contained more than just Shan-hu's mother, and they had to find the tapes before the trial ended. 2 days later, the first round of the public trial began, with the prosecutor's charges against Jang Taikuei mainly for the murder of Officer Kim Jae-young, demanding a life sentence for him. Due to the serial murder case from 25 years ago, the statute of limitations for prosecution had expired. Although Jang Taikuei's fingerprints were found on the weapon, he still denied it. His lawyer even attempted to shift the blame onto Shan-hu, presenting evidence of Shanhu's illegal purchase of firearms and ammunition 5 years ago. The lawyer claimed he was the one who shot the victim. Of course, such evidence could not be submitted as proof. Even if the firearms were purchased in Shanhu's name, it couldn't prove that he was the actual owner. As the two sides were in a heated confrontation, Jang Shanhu surprisingly agreed to testify. He wanted to take the stand to avenge his mother. Jang Shanhu admitted to helping his brother kidnap Kim Jae-young, and he had witnessed Jang Taekue commit murder in full, including the previous attack on the residents of the Hwangtian apartment, all under the orders of Jang Taekue. The defendant's lawyer naturally refused to give up, and he seized on the fact that Jang Shanhu had a history of drug use, and aimed to prove that his mind was unclear, making his testimony invalid. He demanded that Jang Shanhu produce the videotape, mentioned in his testimony as evidence. The first public trial was temporarily adjourned. The police worked overtime to search for Jang Taekue, and finally found a blind spot. Inside Jang Taekue's Taeyu Industrial Development Building, there was a 5-story basement originally used as an equipment room, but it had been closed for many years, and there were no elevators connecting to it, so they had missed it during their previous searches. When the police re-entered for a search, they discovered a secret room, which was not only luxuriously decorated but also contained a safe. Inside were images of the victims from the Jae serial murder case, including scenes from the murder of Duan's family. Even Karina couldn't bear to see the details. The police immediately submitted the videotapes as additional evidence for the second trial. However, these were all evidence outside the prosecution period, and had nothing to do with this trial. Even if it could prove that Jang Taekue lied in court, the police did not ensure the defendant's rights when obtaining this evidence, which resulted in procedural flaws. Thus, it lacked evidentiary value. Jang Taekue was indeed a cold-blooded killer, and he admitted to being the serial killer known as Jae. But since the statute of limitations had passed, he could not be prosecuted. As long as Jang Taekue did not confess that he killed Kim Jae-young, the police or prosecutors couldn't provide evidence. Then his current charges would not hold up. Jang Taekue showed no remorse towards the families of the deceased.
오히려 당신들이 나한테 고마워해야지. 당신들의 소중한 가족을 해방시켜줬으니까!
The angry family members of the deceased wanted to rush over and kill him. As Duan, the first person to discover the crime scene of Kim Jae-young, he took the stand to testify. At the same time, he announced that he was the only surviving witness of the Jae serial murder case.
지금 본 사건과 전혀 관련이 없는 진술을 하고 있습니다.
변호인, 한 번만 더 제들면 퇴정입니다.
Duan continued his testimony with Karina's tacit approval, but the lawyer interrupted once again. Karina immediately ordered him to be removed from the courtroom. At this moment, Duan pleaded with the court to deliver justice for the deceased, to show that the law had not abandoned the people. Karina found herself in a dilemma. If she convicted Jang Taekue, she would have to die. If she released Jang Taekue, she would feel guilty towards the victims and their families. This was akin to pouring salt on Duan's wounds. Germary and the others noticed Karina's hesitation, and they knelt down to urge her not to act recklessly. Just release Jang Taekue and then kill him, and you can safely return to hell as a judge. If Han Duan knew that it was because of him that you were forever extinguished, that would be the greatest harm. However, Karina was resolute, and she wouldn't let Duan know about Bale's threats. On the day of the third trial, the landlady's daughter arrived at the scene. Karina glanced at the judge's oath on the wall, and composed herself as she entered the courtroom. The defendant Jang Taekue shot and injured the victim Jin Zhaoying before killing her, brutally dismembering her body. The testimony of eyewitness Jang Shanhu was consistent, and the weapon showed the defendant's fingerprints. Given the above points, it could be confirmed that Jang Taekue was guilty. The Jae serial murder crimes from 25 years ago, although the statute of limitations had expired, the victims' families jointly submitted a petition demanding severe punishment for the criminal. After considering all conditions,
피고인에게 다음과 같이 판결한다. 피고인 정태규에게 사형을 선고한다.
Karina finally made her choice, and her reputation finally improved. Duan took her to visit her parents and Officer Kim. On the other side, Jang Shanhu was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Before getting onto the transport vehicle, he slipped a note to Karina. Jang Shanhu also said, "The safe in my room." Meanwhile, for some reason, the court president was touched by Karina's final ruling. He took the initiative to expose the interference of congressional members in the trial. After making the declaration, the president resigned.
법원장님은 앞으로 뭐 먹고 사시게요?
유튜브 하려고? 전직 판사가 알려주는 법률 상식. 티켓 어떻게?
At the same time, the landlady still went to the prison. She wanted to ask Jang Taekue why he killed her young son. Jang Taikue showed a scorn expression upon hearing these words. He was raised by his mother since childhood, and lived in a poor and dilapidated rental house. Jang Taikue had endured humiliation for half his life, which is why he despised the poor more than anything. Jang Taikue told the landlady, "You killed your son, you had children without money, otherwise your son wouldn't have lived in Wangshandong, and wouldn't have encountered me in that alley. Do you know what your son said before he died? He begged me for his life, saying that otherwise his mother would be sad." Jang Taikue suddenly showed a sinister smile. "I told that kid, your mother won't be sad. She'll only be happy to be rid of one more burden." The landlady completely broke down upon hearing this, and a guard came over to take her away. After the landlady returned home, she received something from Karina. It was a birthday gift that Zhang Shanhu had found when he witnessed her son being killed, containing a letter written to his mother before the boy's death, as well as a bottle of hand cream for women. Although the gift was many years late, this birthday gift finally reached the mother's hands, but bad people often don't die easily. That day, Zhang Shanhu suddenly committed suicide in the hospital room. After Jang Taikue learned of this, he immediately applied for special leave. Jang Taikue wanted to take this opportunity to escape from prison, and Karina was about to face bail's judgment. Before she left, she specifically went to say goodbye to Duan. They promised to see each other again the next day. However, after returning, Duan felt increasingly uneasy. He sensed that something was off about Karina during the day. A bad premonition arose in Duan's heart, and he hurried to find Karina. By the time Duan arrived at the scene, everything was already too late. Although Karina was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment, she still had stopped breathing, and had no signs of life. The doctor stood by the bed, declaring the time of death. Duan walked over to guard Karina's side. His tears fell onto her cheek. In the next moment, Karina unexpectedly woke up. It turned out that after her body died, her soul temporarily returned to hell. Baal opened a great gate, allowing her to enter eternal death. Gabriel surprisingly pursued her to hell, saying that God shows mercy to the good and compassionate. Karina's trial of Jang Taikue has comforted countless grieving people, so God granted Karina life once more. But Gabriel, in saving her, sacrificed her own body and life. Duan hadn't fully processed the joy of Karina's awakening when he received a call informing him that Jang Taikue had escaped. Jang Taikue slipped away, under the pretense of attending his brother's funeral, and now he was meeting with a lawyer under the bridge. The lawyer brought fake passports and cash as instructed. But unexpectedly, Jang Taikue was untrustworthy. He killed the lawyer as soon as he got the goods. Suddenly, someone called the lawyer, saying there was a problem with the fake passports, and they needed to be remade. Jang Taikue had no choice but to wait another day. However, this call was a bait deliberately released by Karina. She intended to kill Jang Taikue herself. Duan wouldn't interfere with his lover's choice, but as a police officer, he would also fully pursue the case. Would Jang Taikue be captured by the police, or would he die at the hands of a demon? It all depends on his luck now. Right now, he doesn't know what to think. Jang Taikue actually drove back to the villa. Karina had anticipated this all along. She was standing on the second floor, greeting Jang Taikue, who angrily threw a rock at her. She pushed him down with one hand. Jang Taikue was truly arrogant to the point of stupidity. He actually thought he could fight a demon. Karina stepped forward and pulled him into the illusion. She said Jang Taikue had killed a total of 14 people so far. If he were to die easily, it would be too merciful for this murderer.
그래서 특별한 걸 준비했어.
에이씨.
열쇠 동안 도망가.
Karina stood behind, shooting arrows, to make Jang Taikue deeply feel the feeling that death was right before him. In the blink of an eye, Jang Taikue was struck by several arrows. He forced himself to continue running away, but stepped into a bear trap. Karina pinned him to a tree trunk. However, the game was not over. When Jang Taikue woke up, he found himself in hell. Karina had someone bring in Counselor Jang, and she released him from his shackles. The family matters between the two were not for outsiders to interfere with. After Karina finished speaking, she threw out two swords, telling them to resolve it themselves. The Jang father and son picked up their weapons. It was truly a scene of warmth. Jang Taikue initially thought that killing an old man would be too easy, but he soon realized that his father had transformed into a form of Satan. He naturally was no match for Satan, and before long, Jang Taikue was killed by him. His head separated from his body. Before Jang Taikue could recover from his fear, he found himself in the house where Duan lived as a child. A family photo of four hung on the wall, and he saw Karina. Jang Taikue immediately charged at her with scissors, but in the next moment, he had his wrist severed by her.
넌 한다운 가족의 왼쪽 손목, 어깨, 발목을 잘랐어. 아직 살아있었는데 말이야.
Karina could not forgive him for hurting Duan's family. She planned to make Jang Taikue experience the feeling of being chopped to death. The continuous torture made Jang Taikue kneel down and beg for mercy. Hearing this, Karina had him put on a prison outfit, and she directly beat Jang Taikue up, breaking his legs. Jang Taikue was beaten badly, and he struggled to bow and apologize, but he didn't understand that apologizing is the duty of a sinner, and that forgiveness is not the obligation of the victim. Not every person who apologizes can wash away their sins and start anew. Moreover, Jang Taikue's apology was worthless. It was merely a means for him to save his life. Karina took out the blade of judgment and sent him to hell, where he would forever receive punishment. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Jang Taikue hanging in the yard, with 14 coffins placed in front of him, each marked with the names of the victims. Although the lives lost could not be brought back, at least the perpetrator could no longer continue to survive. After everything was over, everyone went together to say goodbye at Grandma Angel's funeral. Now that the mission was complete, Karina would follow Ball back to hell. She had secured 3 years of leave for herself, and Karina hoped to spend some time with Duan.
난 앞으로 우리가 만든 추억으로 영겁의 세월을 버틸 거예요.
Unexpectedly, Karina was assigned to Shenyang as a judge, due to the bias in her final judgment, where she dealt with minor cases every day. This lasted for 2 years. Duan would come to visit her whenever he had time. These two were quite unfortunate, with 3 years left still living apart due to work. However, Karina didn't want to give up her role as a judge, and Duan respected her choice. They wouldn't abandon their principles for love. Fortunately, Karina performed excellently, and finally, in her last year, she was able to transfer back to the Seoul Central Court. During this time, the victims saved by either Karina or Duan had begun to heal and return to normal lives. Karina felt deeply comforted as she watched them. As for the assistant, he had become quite remarkable. He no longer believed in Christianity, and now spent his days ringing bells at the temple. There had also been significant changes near Huangtian Apartments, which had transformed into a warm community. The landlady's home was filled with photos of her daughter, indicating that they had reconciled. The single mother had opened a small restaurant, often treating her neighbors to free meals. Everyone was moving toward a better life. After Karina returned to the Central Court, she hadn't been happy for long, before she was faced with a mountain of paperwork. The former chief judge had indeed started a public law program on YouTube. Karina was working overtime that day. Ball suddenly appeared to convey Lucifer's proposal. He said that as long as within the remaining year, Karina could kill 10 criminals and send them to hell, she could live on as a human. Ball urged Karina to think it over carefully. This was certainly a good opportunity, but Karina felt very troubled. If she had to personally kill the criminals, she would have to acquit them during the trial, which would harm the victims and their families. She simply couldn't get past her conscience. Karina also felt that doing so would be a disgrace as a judge. Duan knew that Karina had already made up her mind, so he said, "No matter what choice you make, I will support you." As for what decision Karina would ultimately make, the film did not provide a clear answer. Thus, this season ended with an open conclusion. Once the queen of Korean dramas, Park Shin-hye's return after marriage featured the appealing theme of a female judge using violence to combat violence. The twisted revenge setup allowed the audience to experience thrills. The portrayals of the criminals in several cases truly made viewers want to hit them through the screen. This fully engaged the emotions of the viewers. There were also subtle jabs at the law, and overall, the script had no major issues. Perhaps the biggest deterrent is the male lead, who embodies the principles and steadfast beliefs of a police officer. However, the actor's performance and appearance don't match Park Shin-hye's, resulting in the lack of sparks between the main characters. The couple's romantic storyline was supposed to be a highlight, serving as a pivotal point to help the demon judge realize the importance of humanity beyond the law. But the failure in casting the male lead made it impossible for the audience to empathize with the judge's downfall. The decline in aesthetic standards is truly a challenge faced by the whole world.